on CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC's Information Radio, and we are live from our downtown studios on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, on YouTube, and it is 3 minutes to 6 a.m. on your Wednesday morning. Wow, it's blustery out there. We're going to talk more about the weather, as always, in a minute, but why don't we say good morning first today? Good morning to Corey Funk, who has made his triumphant return. Glad you're feeling a bit better, Corey. Corey directs the program, and will be on air covering the commute. Also, good morning to Abby Adeyemi, who's behind the controls, our technical producer on the show, and Abby also covers the weather forecasts on air. And good morning to Kevin Nipatebo, who is our YouTube producer and saying hello right now if you're watching us there. Okay, let's have a look at what is happening in news to start, and then we'll get into some of these blowing snow advisories out there. Heather Wells is here first with our headlines.
Good morning. Well, the head of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce welcomes the decision to open a Manitoba trade office in Washington. Lauren Remillard says it's something his group recommended after a recent trip to the U.S. Capitol. They found American politicians knew about other provinces, but not Manitoba. The owner of a unique gift shop in Lacabani says her business is struggling, partly because of the economy, but also because, she says, of the local government's lack of a tourism strategy. We're going to head to Lacabani and hear about that coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, I mentioned advisories, so blowing snow advisory for Winnipeg, for Steinbach, Selkirk, Gimli, Dougal, Portage, Morden, Winkler, Altona, all areas around. Poor visibility this morning and snow and blowing snow will be occurring. So we're talking winds that are going to be gusting up to 70 and 80 kilometers per hour. So that's the first thing to note. Also, there's a snow squall watch for the RM of Portage, St. Clements, Broken Head, Alexander, Victoria Beach, and Lacabani. So watch for that. That means that 5 to 10 centimeters of snow squalls could be possible blowing around out there. Our actual high in Winnipeg today is going to be right around, with wind chill, it'll feel like minus 23, but around minus 14 this afternoon, and cloudy with flurries and, as we mentioned, really strong winds. Well, in the first hour of the program, we're going to talk about the holiday train. It is rolling through Manitoba once again, a family-friendly concert with venues, and it's also going to be moving to different parts of Winnipeg first, and then the province, as I mentioned. And we're also going to be taking a closer look at the measures that Canada could implement to appease American concerns around border security. So we'll have that full interview coming up.
Today on Q.
Taylor Tomlinson came up on the church comedy circuit. Then a, honestly, pretty PG tweet got a lot of those church gigs canceled and made her rethink her whole relationship with faith and comedy. Now she's a late night host on CBS. She'll be here to tell you her story.
What can I bring to the potluck, Nana? She's like, napkins. Can you handle that?
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland. And on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Marcia Young. The Assembly of First Nations is gathering for the first time since October's contentious vote on child welfare reform. At the time, First Nations leaders rejected an offer from Ottawa worth nearly $50 billion. The AFN is expected to debate the issue again today. As Olivia Stefanovich reports, the goal is to secure a new deal before the next federal election.
I was kind of disappointed.
Archie Wabas says he left the last gathering of the Assembly of First Nations feeling uneasy. He's the chief of Woonaman Lake First Nation, a fly-in community in northwestern Ontario.
Right now I don't have the financial resources and staffing and the proper tools and resources to help children in need.
Wabas says Ottawa's $47.8 billion offer would make all the difference in helping First Nations families and children stay together by keeping food on the table, a roof over their heads, and having counseling services available. But the deal was rejected by AFN delegates last fall.
It looked at a 10-year process. We're saying that we need something that will stand the test of time because our children deserve that.
Mary TG runs a First Nations Child and Family Service Agency in BC. She says the AFN needs to demand a better deal, one that guarantees funding beyond the next decade and ensures it is spread equally across the country.
This is the most important decision that chiefs will probably have to make in their life, because we have to ensure discrimination ends and never happens again.
But time is running out for the AFN to secure a deal with the Liberal government. A federal election is expected in less than a year's time, and the Conservatives aren't making any promises on First Nations child welfare reform. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Pressure is mounting on South Korea's president. Protesters from South Korea's biggest labor union are among those calling for Yoon Suk-yeol to resign. They are vowing to strike unless he does. Yoon's attempt to impose martial law has created a crisis for South Korea. Opposition parties have now started impeachment proceedings against him. Jan Kamsen Brunsby has more from Seoul.
Opposition lawmakers in South Korea gathered en masse today outside the country's National Assembly, chanting "Investigate treasonous acts." They're taking steps to force the resignation of President Yoon Suk-yeol and have submitted a bill calling for his impeachment after he issued a surprise martial law decree the day before. The move has plunged the nation into political uncertainty. Opposition leader Lee Jae-myung says the failure to enforce military power could spark instability and have critical consequences.
The risk of provoking North Korea and eventually leading to military conflict is significantly high. Dear citizens, we need your vigilance and solidarity.
Reports say all of Yoon's cabinet members have already offered to step down. His decision to impose martial law took people in South Korea by surprise. Kim Byung-in, who lives in the capital, says it left him concerned about the future of the country. Many others say they feel disturbed and frightened. South Korea is now facing international fallout. Reports say U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was planning to meet his South Korean and Japanese counterparts next week. But the developments have cast doubt over that and over other high-level meetings. The Canadian government issued a statement last night saying it hopes the situation will be resolved peacefully. Jan Clementon-Brimby for CBC News, Seoul.
France's government could be forced out for the first time in more than 60 years. A non-confidence vote is being held today by lawmakers in the country, and many suggest the minority government of Prime Minister Michel Barnier will be defeated. Barnier attempted to push through his budget without a vote in Parliament. His lack of a majority now means that he could be the shortest-serving prime minister in France's modern history. NATO members are promising to provide air defense systems to Ukraine. Foreign ministers are into a second day of talks in Brussels. Secretary General Mark Rutte says all members are determined to protect Ukraine's infrastructure from Russian attacks.
There was a clear agreement on the table last night that to help Ukraine, particularly with its infrastructure, has to be a priority. And I'm confident that allies will follow up in the coming days and weeks in making sure that whatever they can supply to Ukraine will be supplied.
British Foreign Minister David Lammy is also attending the meeting in Brussels. He says Russia remains a threat to all NATO allies.
There is one country whose hand is in so much of it, and that is Russia. And that is why, as we meet here discussing these important issues, it's hugely important that we step up defence spending across NATO allies particularly.
Lammy says the United Kingdom is working to increase its NATO spending. He is encouraging all allies to do the same. The U.S. Supreme Court is beginning hearings today into a transgender rights case. It is a challenge to a Tennessee law that bans gender-affirming care for minors. Critics want the justices to declare the 2023 law unconstitutional. Richard Madden is following the case from Washington. And Richard, just what is at issue in the Supreme Court hearing?
Yeah, it's a high-profile case, and the arguments will focus on whether state laws that ban gender-affirming treatment for minors violates the federal Equal Protection Clause under the 14th Amendment that requires the government to treat people the same. Now, this challenge was brought by 3 families affected by a law passed by Tennessee's Republican-led statehouse a year ago that bans gender-affirming care for minors and penalizes doctors who provide treatment like hormone therapy or puberty blockers for youth under 18 with gender dysphoria. But the law does not apply to cisgender youth. One of the plaintiff's lawyers who will argue before the conservative majority high court says that's discrimination. Here's lawyer Chase Strangio.
This is a law that bans medical treatment only when it is prescribed inconsistent with an individual's sex. Our argument is that that treats people differently because of their sex.
Now, Tennessee state lawyers are expected to argue the law doesn't discriminate because it applies to both boys and girls. And the law, they say, protects children from irreversible, unproven medical procedures.
It'll be several months before the court decides, but what are the broader implications here?
Yeah, that's true. Don't expect a ruling anytime soon, but when the court does make their decision, it could have a major impact to the more than 24 Republican-led states that have passed similar laws. And it also comes a few weeks before Republicans regain control of Congress and President-elect Donald Trump returns to the White House, and he's vowed to further restrict treatments for transgender minors and ban transgender athletes from women's sports.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. Indigenous leaders from northern Alberta want an apology and action from Ottawa. A parliamentary committee is hearing testimony on contamination at a Transport Canada wharf. Local communities say they were never told about the contamination, which dates back decades. As Kate Kyle reports, they're demanding remediation.
This is the water we drink, swim, and play in.
Band councillor Tammy Tuckaroo reads a statement from a Mikisew Cree First Nation member.
This dock provides connection to my way of life for survival. Once again, the government failed our First Nation.
They are concerned about the Transport Canada wharf called the Big Dock in Fort Chipewyan, Alberta. Used as a boat launch, it's also a gathering place for swimming and harvesting. The site has been contaminated for years. But the Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation, the Fort Chipewyan Métis, and the Mikisew Cree First Nation all say they learned about it this past summer. A 2017 report commissioned by the Department of Transportation found heavy contaminants from fueling barges and other spills. Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation Chief Alan Adam.
Well, water contamination in the community of Fort Chip is at a third world level.
In a letter emailed to Fort Chipewyan leaders, Canada's Transport Minister Anita Anand said the studies have not identified any risk to human health. Toxicologist Mandy Olsgaard testified they can't know that for sure.
The risk assessment did not assess or provide results for potential risks from the ingestion of traditional foods and medicines. It did not assess the potential risks from contact with contaminated soils or the surface water.
In a statement to CBC, Transport Minister Anita Anand said they will work to accelerate remediation efforts. Anand will be called to testify on Thursday. Kate Kyle, CBC News, Yellowknife.
And there is more on this story at cbcnews.ca. It's on our main page. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime. cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team at Information Radio. This is CBC's Morning Show on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. You can hear my sentence hanging there. I'm looking up the wind speeds right now. It's crazy. Winds are northwest right now, gusting to 68 kilometers per hour, and that's not as strong as they're going to get throughout the day, so hang on tight, everybody. It's minus 13 right now in Winnipeg. Abby's got your forecast for this blustery Wednesday morning coming up in just a moment. This hour on the program, the holiday trains rolling through the province. We'll tell you how you can see some of these performances and help out. It's all for a good cause. In addition, this hour on the show, we're going to have a closer look at the measures that Canada could implement to appease American concerns around border security. And we'll ask the question whether or not they're necessary when you think about our border security, or whether they are just to follow suit with the Americans and keep that relationship. So stay tuned. We'll have that conversation coming up at about 10 to 7 for you. Right now, let's get into local headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, the head of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce says Manitoba does need a physical presence in Washington. That's why Lauren Remillard applauds the province's plan to open a trade office in the U.S. capital. He says during a recent trip there, American politicians knew about other provinces but not Manitoba. Scott Gillingham says Winnipeg's growth is straining the city's finances to the breaking point. The mayor warning of tough choices in store as the city prepares to release its next budget next Wednesday. Those stories and more coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. It's
Good.
A little windy out there.
I was going to say your hair looks good and calm. Obviously, you haven't been outside.
The hair always looks constantly windblown.
It does not. It's the kind of weather where it's not just our hair that's going to be blown around. It's like hang on to the small pets and children because wow. And driving, right? There's going to be issues of visibility for sure. So let's turn our attention there. Abby's got some of those details in the forecast. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Maris. Across board, we're looking at a windy day. We're going to see strong gusts from between 70 and 80 kilometers in the Red River Valley and up to 60 kilometers in western Manitoba. Now, this wind, they could make highway travel difficult, bringing reduced visibility throughout the day, especially in open areas. This will be sweeping snow here and there. So if you're on the highway, please be very careful out there. Let's look at temperatures in Winnipeg. We are currently at minus 13. It's partly cloudy out there. We're already noticing the blowing snow in some areas. We do have that advisory in effect, and that is expected throughout the day. We will see temperatures dropping to around minus 14 today. Though a bit chilly this morning, factoring in the wind chill, it actually feels like minus 30 outside. We have a risk of frostbite, so be advised. In other regions, we're going to see the strong winds and reduced visibility. We're going to see western Manitoba and central regions looking really colder with the strong winds also and chilly temperatures. And up north, we're looking at chills in the range of minus 35 in Thompson and minus 39 in Churchill. So my heart is with you guys. I hope I stay warm. That's all I can say. But Winnipeg right now, we are at minus 13.
Yes, love to our northern neighbors always. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Let's get to what's happening in the in the commute this morning. And Corey Funk is in for those details. Hello to you.
Hello. Yeah, as you can imagine, that blowing snow is causing poor visibility on highways pretty much right across the province, west of Winnipeg, east of Winnipeg, up north and around Thompson as well on those highways. And the highways around Thompson in particular actually being reported as covered as well, heading from Thompson to Lynn Lake as well as from Thompson to Gillam. So just heads up if you're hitting those highways this morning. As well as the highways around Steinbach are not looking great either, as well as parts of Highway 75, even from Winnipeg to about St. Agath, being reported as covered as well. So careful out there if you are hitting the highways this morning. Might not be ideal conditions for a drive. I would love to get some updates about what you're seeing. Here in the city, haven't heard of any major issues yet, but things can always change, as you know, especially in this weather. So give me a call if you're walking, bike, and driving. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, the holiday train, as I mentioned, is rolling through Manitoba once again. This is the train that has been a seasonal tradition since 1999. It stops at various locations in the province. On board are musical performers, and they put on a free show for a good cause. Terry Cunha is a spokesperson for CPKC Railway. CBC's Faith Fundal reached Terry yesterday to find out more.
You must be excited for the holiday train to arrive in Manitoba.
Yes, we're definitely excited. I know there's a lot of enthusiasm from the community, and there's been a lot of enthusiasm from all the stops we've already been able to hit over the last 10 days during our holiday train endeavor. So I expect a lot of excitement, some large crowds, and plenty of enthusiasm. As you mentioned, this is our 26th year of the holiday train, and we're looking forward to seeing plenty of smiles and happy faces as we roll in tonight.
How did you choose who would be performing on the Manitoba stretch?
We're very fortunate. We have a large group of very talented musicians who are performing across Canada and the United States. And tonight, for Manitoba audience, we have Tyler Shaw and Shawnee Kish. Some very talented musicians, and I know from hearing from Tyler himself, he's just been so excited and thrilled to be able to participate in the holiday train. And he's been doing it now for a few shows this year and continues to share a lot of that excitement, and I'm certain tonight will be a wonderful show for those that are attending.
Now, I've never seen one of your shows, so I'm sort of trying to envision in my head what the stage looks like, how it works. Do people go on the train, or is the stage sort of on the inside of the train, but people are outside? How does it work?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So our train is fully lit up with Christmas lights and decorations. And as it rolls into the stop, they'll be playing some Christmas music. And then what happens is when the show starts, one of the train doors opens, and when it opens, our musicians are there with their band and begin playing their music. And they'll be playing a combination of their hits and many Christmas songs and carols, to engage the crowd. And it's fully lit up, so hopefully everyone who's in attendance will have an opportunity to hear and see the musicians live that will be performing on the train.
And when people watch the shows, they get to see the special show, but you're also asking folks to make a donation. What are you asking for?
Yes, that's the key thing for the holiday train. What we're trying to do is help address food insecurity during the holiday season. And for anyone attending tonight and all of our shows, all we're asking is all the shows are free, just to bring a non-perishable food item that you could donate. And tonight in Winnipeg, the show will be working with Harvest Manitoba. So we're just asking everyone who's coming out tonight, bring a non-perishable food item and help those in need. As we've been very lucky over the 26 years that we've been doing the holiday train. We've been able to raise over 5 million pounds of food and help collect over $24.3 million to support local causes across Canada and the United States. And we're looking for that continued generosity tonight in Manitoba to help your community and those in need.
For folks who are just joining us, remind them again what the other Manitoba locations are.
You bet. On December 5th, we're going to be in Portage, La Prairie, Carberry, and Brandon, and then we're going to close it off on December 6th in Verdun. So we have 6 shows over 3 nights in Manitoba.
All right. So what would you say to folks who this might be their first time watching the holiday train concert? What do they need to know?
What you need to know is that this is a truly magical experience to come out and enjoy yourselves. Bring your friends, bring your family, bring your neighbor, and come out and help celebrate the holiday season in a really wonderful experience with CPKC and some very talented musicians. This is a family-friendly event, and we ask everyone who's coming out to have a great time and, of course, to help support those in need and to bring a non-perishable food item tonight to support, as there will be local community groups in each one of our stops over the 3 days in Manitoba to help your friends and neighbors during the holiday season.
That's Terry Cunha, a spokesperson for KPKC Railway, and in conversation with Faith Fundal. So they were talking about last night, of course, in Winnipeg, but you have lots to look forward to if you're in those rural areas, because the train is coming next tomorrow to Portage La Prairie, and then it moves to Carberry and to Brandon. Friday, it's going to move through Verdun. But we don't want to leave you just with feeling like you missed out. So Tyler Shaw did play that show last night if you were there, and here he is with Christmas all over again.
Well, it's Christmas time again. Decorations are all hung by the fire. Come on! Everybody's singing. All the bells are ringing out, and it's Christmas all over again. Again. Christmas time's gonna find you happy in there by the fire. I hope you have a good one. I hope you all get your shopping done. And it's Christmas all over. It's Christmas all over again. It's Christmas all over again.
I like his version of that tune. That is Tyler Shaw, if you're looking to get it for down on your playlist for the holiday season. Of course, he's one of the musicians who is on board the train that is moving through Manitoba, the holiday train right now, with performances coming up for the next couple of days. It is 6:22 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app and YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio, and thanks for being with us on this very blustery Wednesday morning. It's minus 13 Windsor Northwest at 68 kilometers per hour, and that is going to just get stronger. We do have a blowing snow advisory that's been issued. It means on the highways, be careful, check before you go out. Can really slick things up and make it icy if you're not dealing with visibility issues. Well, the holiday season can be full of joy, but it also, of course, can be full of a lot of stress. The family gatherings and the shopping and the expectations, right? All of this is pressure packed. So let's talk about how to manage all of that. Sarah Dimmerman is with us, psychologist and author. Good morning.
Good morning.
Do we hide the stress of the holidays? Is that why it gets worse? Because we feel like we're all supposed to be happy?
Yeah, that's part of it. We, as you mentioned, the word expectations. You know, what expectations that people place on themselves, or the beliefs about what others expect of them too. And I think a lot of this comes from just seeing images of how other people present this time of year, or the Merry Christmas songs and all that kind of thing that makes people feel that it should be all light and fun and festivity. And for many people, that's not the case. Even a wedding, for example, which could be one of the most beautiful times of anybody's life, can be very stressful. All the planning and the coordinating and the right leading up to the event. So any gathering of any magnitude can be very stressful depending on how you manage it and whether you do things that you really want to do versus doing things because you feel obligated or to do things a certain way.
I also feel like there's this clash of emotions that happen because people just heard that Happy Christmas song and, I was kind of dancing around. Like I love the season myself.
Right.
But I know that I have loved ones who really struggle at this time of year as well with all kinds of emotion.
Yeah.
And those two things have to come together, often around a dinner table.
Yeah.
What's the mix of that like when you're gathering with family and friends?
Well, I think, as you said, you don't have to feel either or. You can feel that mix of emotion, or there are parts of the holiday season that you may love. As you said, just the music and the frivolity and going to the mall and seeing kids with Santa and that kind of thing. But as you said, when it comes closer to home, people might be more stressed out about home entertaining, for example. And so, or people might have been through a loss or an estrangement within the family that has changed things for them. So it's a very different time of year for many different people, and it can also be, as I said, good for some parts of it and not good other parts of it. And I think, as you said, coming around the dinner table, and especially when you're inviting family members, maybe there are two family members that don't talk to one another very much, so you want to invite them both, but you're afraid of the fireworks that could happen while they're there. So you think about, should I let them decide whether they're not going to come or whether they're going to come, or do I choose one over the other? And that can be stressful. So there's a lot of, obligation, feeling a sense of obligation to do things a certain way, maybe doing things the way that your family has done things previously. And so I think part of our conversation, I think, would be helpful to discuss, how to change things up and not to do things just because you feel that you need to or have to do things, or that's because it's the way it's always been done,
yes.
But thinking about whether it's really working for you or not.
So can you give us literal strategies for having that conversation? Because if someone is feeling, especially if you're approaching someone in your family that is really feels strongly that the traditions have to be the exact same way every year,
right,
and it's not working for you for whatever reason, and maybe it's because you have suffered a loss, as you said, or How do you approach that with sensitivity to sort of acknowledge that you still appreciate those traditions, but you need something else or something
Well,
different?
I love just what you said. I really appreciate what we had and the memories that we've shared and the memories I still have and all the beautiful pictures. But I feel like I'm at a point in life where things have changed where I feel like I just need something else. I need to change things up that works better for me and my family. I know in my family, for example, as my children have been with partners, gotten married, don't have grandchildren yet, but as I do, please God, in the future, that it's more difficult to invite my children, their partners, and future grandchildren, and to include my siblings and all of their children and grandchildren. And so I think you've got to figure out, does your house, maybe you've downsized even, and you don't have the space that you once did. So you can think of other options. If you really want to get together as a larger family, is somebody living in a condo building where there's a party room that everybody can gather together, and then the cleanup is not as difficult as having it in your own home. So sometimes you can come up with how to change this up so we can all still be together if we want to be. Or maybe, I can have like a smaller get-together where I prepare a larger meal for more immediate family. But then maybe I can have an open house one afternoon where people drop in for drinks and appies, for example. And I'm not having to serve a huge meal at 7 o'clock at night and then be cleaning up in the kitchen at midnight.
Now, we're talking about people who are privileged and lucky enough to have friends and family and money for food, right?
Right.
What
yes.
about loneliness during this time? I mean, that's a huge challenge for a lot of people.
Absolutely. I think... and that can happen for so many reasons, life circumstances, finances change, for example. People, may have gone through a divorce or another loss of estrangement, or one's children are spending time with the other parent, or they don't have the financial wherewithal, and they're feeling very lonely. And what I've heard from my clients is that sometimes when they indirectly or directly talk to somebody that they know that is having a gathering, that they'd like to attend, and just asking, right out, like, would you mind another guest at your table? They've been pleasantly surprised by their responses, or a part of, maybe it's not for the big main family the dinner, but maybe it's the next day, for example. Or sometimes, even if you hint at it, people will rise to the occasion. And if that doesn't work out for you, and if you really not like to be alone, you can think about, what might be open on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, an ice skating rink, or going to a restaurant alone, or looking into community meetups where others in a similar position may come together too, or maybe even a church function.
All good ideas.
Yeah.
Blustery -13. We do have a blowing snow advisory for the city of Winnipeg, as well as parts of the Interlake and Red River Valley, as well as Pembina Valley. Wind at times gusting to 80 kilometers an hour, reducing visibilities in blowing snow. Our temperature in Winnipeg today falling to -14. The head of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce welcomes the decision to open a Manitoba trade office in Washington. The province announced that yesterday. Lauren Remillard says it's something his group recommended after a recent trip to the U.S. Capitol. He says many American politicians and other officials don't know where Manitoba is.
We've met with Ontario, we've met with Quebec, we've met with BC. They could name the offices of the other province. They kind of had to scratch their head a little bit and wonder, where is Manitoba? And we had to explain, we're north of North Dakota, right beside Ontario.
Remillard says Manitoba can't expect Americans to understand the opportunities this province offers without being physically present. He says the person who runs the office will have to speak the Trump form of Republican messaging, and Remillard thinks there are several people who would be effective. Winnipeg got a bit of good news in an otherwise bleak outlook for the city's finances. The Winnipeg Police Service says it will meet its 2024 budget targets after finding an additional $2 million in savings. The money comes from rent savings, delayed hiring, lower overtime costs, and extra revenue from special duty policing. City Finance Chair Councillor Jeff Rawati says a balanced policing budget is good news, but it won't be enough to dig the city out of a deep deficit.
$2 million, one way or the other in a, $1.2 billion budget isn't, super material, but at the end of the day, I mean, every dollar counts when we're as tight as things are these days at City Hall.
The city is facing a $23 million deficit for 2024, $9 million of which may have to come out of next year's budget. Construction to reopen Portage and Main to pedestrian traffic officially gets going this week. The city says pre-construction traffic signals and underground work at the intersection has finished. And today, crews are expected to install the first long-term lane closures. Sewer repairs and demolition work on the existing pedestrian barricades will happen in coming days. And so traffic will be restricted at various locations throughout the intersection, Portage and Main, over the next 6 months. A full list of closures can be found on the City of Winnipeg website. A Lacabani gift shop owner says her business is struggling, in large part because Lacabani isn't doing enough to promote tourism. CBC's Emily Brass traveled to Lacabani.
I am planning to close the store on December 21st.
Lita Tom says inflation has kept people from visiting her shop called Manitoba Made, but she also blames local government.
People often will say, where is Lacabani? People know where Gimli is. I've been at fairs in Winnipeg where I've seen people specifically sitting at a table promoting Gimli. Why don't we do that?
So we're looking at attaching a floating dock system over the side here.
Deputy Mayor Keegan Svensson says the town has a plan to draw more tourists. It wants to build a recreational hub on land that's been sitting mostly unused for about 17 years. Ideas include kayak and e-bike rentals and a skating trail, but Svensson says there's no clear date on when work will begin.
Right now we're just talking about the plans of it, but plans are nothing until the money's on the table.
Plans that come too late to save Tom's boutique.
We need places like my little shop, so you can go ahead and tap right there.
Emily Brass, CBC News, Lacabani.
South Korea's main opposition party is urging President Yoon Suk-yeol to resign immediately or face impeachment. Park Chan-tae is the Democratic Party's floor leader.
He should step down, resign immediately. This is the mandate of the people.
The opposition now starting impeachment proceedings against the president. Yesterday, Yoon ended a short-lived martial law that saw troops surround Parliament. Yoon abruptly imposed the emergency martial law after struggling to push forward his agenda in the opposition-dominated Parliament. The Canadian government has released a statement on this crisis. It says Canada values its long-standing relationship with South Korea and hopes the situation will be resolved peacefully. You can hear the latest on this story, as well as other national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. 4 straight losses for the Winnipeg Jets. Mark Scheifele in the third period on TSN as the Jets finally get on the board. The Jets falling 4-1 to the St. Louis Blues. They also fall out of first spot in the Central Division. That spot now belongs to Minnesota. Head coach Scott Arniel says the Jets' strong start couldn't last.
We knew it was going to swing. You know, we had a lot of good fortune here long before these 4 games, and you know, it's swung the other way. Now it's as a group sticking together and, you know, making sure that we go out and, you know, do what we do best, and that's defend first and play a simple game.
The Jets are back on the road playing tomorrow night in Buffalo. You can find more on this story as well as other national and international news and Manitoba news as well. cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thank you, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
Regional forecast time now with Abby.
We are looking across the province. Windy conditions, strong gusts, making it even colder, especially in western Manitoba and the Red River Valley. We will see breezy conditions in most of these areas. Open areas, look out for that. The north will be dropping temperatures significantly also. In Winnipeg, the weather will stay mostly cloudy. We're going to see a few flurries and windy conditions. That would ease in the afternoon. Currently -13, blowing snow out there. We do have that blowing snow advisory in effect. Visibility will be reduced on highways, so look out on perimeter and also look out for deer. They will be crossing. Temperatures will drop to around -14 today. Heading west to Brandon and south central region. Conditions similar to Winnipeg, cold and windy. The chills will be dangerous, so you need to take care out there. And for the north, we're looking at even colder temperatures, frostbite in the forecast in the PA, Flin Flon, Thompson, and Churchill. And as we move from the north down south, we're going to see colder temperatures also. So take precautions out there if you're heading out. Winnipeg, we're at minus 13 at this time.
We almost got Kevin on camera. I was so excited. Kevin's our YouTube producer, always waves at everybody, gives it the peace sign or the hello on the YouTube. But he popped into studio. I thought we'd finally get his lovely face on camera, but he ran away. What a team we have here this morning. So obviously Kevin Ipatebo, Abby Adeyemi, Heather Wells, and also Joni Nicolo and Megan Ketchison, our live crew, as well as Corey Funk. Good morning from all of us. Thanks for being here. If you're listening out there to all of us, you might be wondering what Corey's going to say about the travel situation because of the winds Abby's been mentioning.
Yeah, pretty much if you're hitting the highways really anywhere in the province today, south, north, anywhere, you could assume that's not going to be ideal conditions, either visibility or slick highway. So just be really, really careful before you hit the roads. We'd love to get some updates from folks if you do want to call the commuter line. Here in the city, though, hadn't heard of any major issues yet. But if you do see something going on, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call. That number, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Cor.
Thank you.
Crystal Lee Ramlichan's here now with Business News. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So they've crunched some numbers. How'd Black Friday go for businesses?
Well, when you look at Canadian e-commerce giant Shopify, it did very well. Sellers on the platform brought in more than $11.5 billion in sales between Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and that is a 24% increase compared to last year. And that's a record as well for the platform. So the success was good news for vendors that don't even do Black Friday sales, such as Miriam McGuire, who is the founder of McGuire Shoes in Montreal. She says the business relies on this time of year to drive sales.
I would say I'm up from last year, but we really saw that a lot of customers were waiting to see if we were going to do Black Friday sales. And then they bought the product when they saw that there was no sales. Even though we tell our customer, there's a lot of people that don't believe us because it's so much in the culture, especially in our U.S. store, that they don't trust that we won't do any type of sales on Black Friday. So once the customers see there's no sale, they just buy whatever they need. And often our price, when it's our full price, it's more interesting than our competition in markdown because we still offer a better price.
So Shopify served more than 76 million customers around the world, and peak sales reached 4.6 million per minute just after noon on Black Friday.
To another story now, I just want to let people know that on our cbc.ca/Manitoba website this morning, a new piece went up this week, and it's a first-person piece written by a Canada Post worker. That strike is now into its third week. How's the retail industry now reacting to what's been happening there?
So the Retail Council of Canada is calling on the federal government to intervene. It says the postal strike is putting businesses and their workers in jeopardy. And the organization represents about 54,000 storefronts. And it says the work stoppage is making it harder for retailers to meet customer needs and stay in business. So the president of the council says she knows the best labor agreements are negotiated with both parties at the table, but says that's not happening and it's time to end the strike. So this labor action has been even more disruptive for retailers. Of course, as we've been talking about, it's the industry's busiest season, and that's when sales tend to be higher. Now, to cope with all of this, some businesses are encouraging people to shop in person or are offering in-store pickups for online orders. And others are even eyeing alternative delivery services, but have found that they have much higher costs than Canada Post.
And just staying with shopping for a moment here before we look at markets, why are some dollar stores struggling to win over bargain hunters now?
Yeah, so dollar stores may seem like a logical destination for those looking to save, but that budget mentality hasn't been enough to lift sales for Dollar Tree and Dollar General in the U.S. So shares of the deep discounters have plunged so far this year. Both have cut their full-year forecasts because of weaker than expected sales, and both have had leadership shakeups with their CEOs leaving in the last year or so. Now, those results are a sharp turn for dollar stores, which were once Wall Street darlings. And analysts say that a challenging mix of factors are hurting these retailers. So lower income customers who tend to shop at these chains are most vulnerable to economic changes such as inflation, which people, of course, have been dealing with. Razor-thin operating models such as lean staffing and low hourly pay contribute to sloppy aisles and a poor customer experience. And competition has grown more fierce, with legacy retailers such as Walmart making significant investments in e-commerce to try to keep up with consumers' changing habits during the pandemic. So dollar stores are usually convenient because they usually have a lot of locations, but they don't often or usually have very strong digital offerings. And experts say that's become a disadvantage in this current environment.
What's up in the markets then?
In Europe, markets are edging higher. Germany is up, the UK is down, France is up. In Asia, some stocks are dropping. So Japan is up, Shanghai is down, Hong Kong is down. For oil is down 5 cents to $69.89 US per barrel. Gold is down $1.20 to $2,641 US per ounce. And the dollar is flat right now at 71.1 cents US.
All right, Crystal Lee, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
With Business News, that's Crystal Lee Ramacan. Well, wind is a story in the forecast today. We've got a blowing snow advisory for the city of Winnipeg, Steinbach, Selkirk, Dugald, Portage, Morden. We've got snow squall watches for RMF Portage, for RMF St. Clements, Brokenhead, Alexander, Victoria. You get the picture. We're talking about winds that are gusting from 70 to 80 kilometers per hour. It's making visibility a challenge, roadways slick. It's minus 13 in Winnipeg. And to that end, Prairie Rose School Division has made some decisions here. So they've alerted CBC that St. Laurent School, Region C, will be closed today, and then Region A and B buses in Prairie Rose School Division will be canceled. So there's bus cancellations in Region A and B of Prairie Rose School Division, and then also St. Laurent School is closed. It is right now 6:44 a.m., and you might be up early this morning, maybe going somewhere, maybe you're catching a flight. There are a lot of ways to travel long distances. You can carpool, take the bus, ride the train. And for international destinations, though, figuring out the most climate-friendly method can be tricky because most people take a flight. Listener Heather Dunlop contacted CBC's climate change show, What on Earth, and asked them to crunch the numbers. And here's what they found.
In Canada, more and more people are taking cruises. And the same goes for flying. But how do CO2 emissions from cruising stack up against flying?
We all know that flying has a climate consequence and that it's not a great way to travel. But you might be surprised to know that going by cruise ship is actually worse than flying from a climate perspective.
That voice you hear? That's Brian Comer, director of the Marine Program at the International Council on Clean Transportation. And he's run the numbers comparing flying to cruising.
I was looking at the largest and most efficient cruise ship, which we estimate emits about 250 grams of carbon dioxide per passenger per kilometer. And that's compared to, on average, for a transatlantic flight, it would be about 80 grams of carbon dioxide per passenger per kilometer.
But cruise ships also double as floating hotels, so Brian had to adjust his calculations. Instead of only comparing flying and cruising, he factored in the emissions for length of stay. He used the example of a 2,000-kilometer journey and found that a passenger on a cruise ship emits nearly 2 times more carbon dioxide than someone who flies and books a hotel.
It's about 500 kilograms of carbon dioxide to go on a 5-night cruise compared to 235 kilograms of carbon dioxide if you were to fly and stay 5 nights in a 4-star hotel.
Okay, so to answer Heather's question, flying has relatively fewer emissions, but both cruising and flying are pretty carbon intensive. So what needs to change?
it shouldn't just be up to individuals to think about their carbon footprint and their impact on our planet. Our decision makers, our governments from local all the way up to international, and the corporations that have a huge carbon footprint on our planet are the ones that actually need to take more responsibility as well.
That's Marcy Keever, the director of the Oceans and Vessels program at Friends of the Earth. She says the cruise industry is working on some promising changes.
Doing things like plugging in to cleaner shore-based power when they are at the dock, or looking at truly green alternative fuels for their ships.
So some cruise companies are testing battery technology for ships that run shorter distances along or close to the shore, while others are going back to basics by attaching sails to use wind energy. The same goes for airplanes. Right now, companies are trying to decarbonize by testing electric planes, hydrogen-fueled planes, and sustainable aviation fuel. But the ultimate goal is to scale up these technologies and resources, and that's where the public comes in.
But I think it's also thinking about how you can advocate to your decision makers, to the companies that you're putting your dollars towards, to really demand better climate behavior and stop lobbying against stronger regulations.
But for Heather, calculating emissions from cruising wasn't all she wanted to know. She also wants more resources to help her make decisions about all kinds of travel.
It'd be great if there was an app for that. For instance, if I want to travel from Montreal to New York City, I've got a choice between air, train, bus, car, or even boat if you want to go the long way around.
Good news, the International Council on Clean Transportation helped develop the Google Flights emissions calculator. It allows you to see which flights have the lowest emissions and then compare them against your budget. And if you're driving, busing, or riding the train, you can search for online emissions calculators that provide a rough estimate for your travel plans. And of course, if you can avoid international travel, a staycation is the greenest option of them all. For CBC Radio, I'm Danielle Piper.
Breaking this hour,
CBC News brings you all the local, national, and international news you need to make sense of your world.
I've ripped up the supply and confidence agreement.
Now's your chance to enjoy a free preview of Canada's source for breaking and live news.
The air raid sirens went off.
Find out why more Canadians choose CBC News Network over any other Canadian news channel. The CBC News Network free preview, on now.
Well, up next on CBC, Manitoba is going to open a new trade office in Washington with the hope of establishing a relationship with President-elect Donald Trump. Premier Rob Canoe said yesterday a permanent presence in the U.S. Capitol will strengthen trade ties, as you've been hearing in the news. Now, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has threatened to hit Canada with tariffs. We've been talking a lot about it, unless his concerns around illegal immigration and drugs are dealt with. Now, in response, the federal government says it wants to increase border monitoring using helicopters and drones. To look at that aspect of this and how it's been developing, Benjamin Muller is with us, professor in social justice and peace studies and program coordinator for migration and border studies at King's University College. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what's your thought about this announcement from Ottawa?
I think in some sense it's not surprising. The pressure of the tariffs were likely to cause some sort of reaction from our government. And in this case, the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol have been using drones since 2015. So I think this is kind of speaking in a language that they are likely to understand and perceive us as doing something effective because they obviously believe it to be effective themselves.
But to what degree is it Canada's issue to sort of jump in on or fight, in your view?
Yeah, I think that's a problem, is we're kind of being held over a barrel here in terms of being asked to deal with a problem that isn't necessarily a problem to the degree that it's been presented to us. If you look at the U.S., its own statistics about our border, the movement of fentanyl or the movement of people, to say it's a drop in the bucket compared to what's going on at the southern U.S. border is even possibly an overstatement. And so I would agree we're kind of being, thrust into dealing with something that we may not feel is the same issue.
Having said that, there has been some analysis this week that some of our issues with drugs moving into Canada are problems. What would you say to that perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly there are things moving from the south to the north into our country. I mean, drugs would be one, firearms would be another major one that certainly law enforcement in many of our major cities would be wanting to deal with. The problem is, of course, having some drones in the air is unlikely to do much with that. Whether we're talking about goods or people, it tends to, their entire interest is to not be seen. And so it may just push them to more secretive and often dangerous pathways.
You said drugs and people, so let's talk about people, because obviously there's also people putting themselves and their families at risk if they're crossing illegally. So what is your thought on the impact that this could have on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the key issues here is if we look at the deployment of surveillance and military technologies like this in the U.S., the people who don't cross at ports of entry and are crossing in irregular ways in between border crossings are often reliant on human traffickers, and their entire objective is to not be seen. And so these strategies tend to just push them to more dangerous pathways, which in some cases even result in higher rates of death.
We obviously in Manitoba know a lot about this. We've just been watching the trial of the two men that have, were found guilty of smuggling, or the man rather who was found guilty of smuggling, then the family that died here, trying to cross, actually in this case from Manitoba into the States, and they died in a field and froze. How are drones impacting the future of Border Patrol overall and surveillance, would you say, just to widen it out a little bit here?
I mean, as I pointed out, the United States has been using them since 2015, so they've certainly become an important part of kind of border management. They do provide a search and rescue capacity because they are effective in potentially seeing people in peril. They are also cost effective. It's easier to deploy some drones than to deploy significant amounts of personnel, which may in the end be more effective, but of course also far more costly.
Where are borders seeing increased use of surveillance and technology? Where they are seeing increased uses already, what are the benefits of that, and what are the big risks of that?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I mean, on the one hand, for sure, having a greater sense of what's happening at your border through forms of surveillance, either for search and rescue purposes or for other purposes in terms of being able to devote the resources you need, that might be helpful. But as I said, all these kind of securitizing strategies tend to push people just in different pathways that are often more dangerous to them. Overall, borders are porous. There's not really any strategies anyone can take to stop that. And the U.S. is a good example of a state that has spent incredible amounts of money and resources on this, and people and things that they would rather not cross continue to do so at quite high rates.
Should Canadians be worried about this at all?
I don't think so, to be perfectly honest. I don't think our border is something that Canadians should be worried about. Obviously, there's a vastness to it, and due in part to our population, there's significant portions that are simply very difficult to monitor. But I also don't think that this is, in our list of priorities as Canadians where we ought to be devoting enormous amounts of resources. I think the political culture of our country would suggest that there are better things to do. And if we want to address things in terms of the border, I think focusing on, making more robust and effective policies dealing with immigration and asylum are likely to be more effective.
I should have been clear with my question. Should Canadians be worried about the increased security at the border?
Oh, well, I mean, I think for most Canadians, the experience of the border is a port of entry, and technologies that are there tend to just enhance the efficiency of our movement. Many of us are carrying passports, and don't have many concerns there. I think it's by and large, the folks who, in part because of inefficient asylum systems, are choosing to take these pathways, and they are likely the ones to be suffering far more than just typical Canadian citizens.
We'll leave our conversation there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Benjamin Muller has been with us this morning, professor in social justice and peace studies and program coordinator for migration and border studies at King's University College. It is 3 minutes to 7 o'clock. We're going to turn to local headlines in a moment. I will mention this first. Because of blustery conditions, strong winds, and roadways being, poor visibility, in some cases, and then also some icy conditions on the rural areas especially, all schools are now closed and no buses in Prairie Spirit School Division. So they've called it Prairie Spirit School Division, all schools closed and no buses. In Prairie Rose, the division says that St. Laurent School, Region C, is closed, and Region A and B buses will be canceled today. Now let's go to those local news headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, construction to reopen Portage and Main to pedestrian traffic is underway, and the city says that means traffic signals and underground work at the intersection has finished. So today, crews will move in to install the first long-term lane closures, and traffic will be restricted at various locations throughout that intersection, Portage and Main, over the next 6 months. The owner of a unique gift shop in Lacabani says her business is struggling, partly because of the economy, but also because of local government's, what she describes as a lack of a tourism strategy. We're going to hear from the owner of Manitoba Made in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, I'm just going to start with traffic, then I'll give you a bit of the forecast for today because we have a highway update from a commuting chopper pilot, they say. He drove north and west the perimeter, the north and west perimeter. He said they were okay, but westbound Highway 1 heading toward Headingley from Winnipeg, really, really poor visibility. So some cars have even decided to pull over this morning. So I was mentioning that we have a blowing snow advisory. It is for the city of Winnipeg, for Steinbach, St. Adolphe, Dugald, Portage, Winkler. And we also have a snow squall watch for the whole RM of Portage, St. Clements, Broken Head. I mean, our winds are going to be gusting up to 70 to 80 k per hour. So that will have people pulling over because you just lose where you're going. So really take it easy. Consider travel this morning carefully and check 511 before you go would be the best advice. Call the commuter line as well. Thank you so much for the call. We did get 788-3093 to reach us. Minus 13 right now in Winnipeg, and our high today is actually going to be around minus 14. With wind chill, minus 23 this morning is what it'll feel like on exposed skin. So you can tell our high is going to be colder, which means the temp's going to drop. Not technically a high. We do have flurries that are going to be with us for the morning as well. Well, let's get to what's coming up in the next hour. A woman was jailed for a month so officials could monitor her tuberculosis treatment. A Manitoba nurse who works with TB patients says that misinformation about the disease can hamper effective treatment. So we're going to look at that as we widen out the story. Also, there are so many displays of holiday lights in Winnipeg. We're going to hear how a local seniors group is taking people on a bus ride to see them, and they might not otherwise be able to get out. So those stories coming up. Right now, the latest about South Korea in your national news.
On the Current.
It's called Cozy Tech, video games and AI bots designed to bring out warm and fuzzy feelings. Might feel nice to play something like Animal Crossing, but the tech writer Carl Chayka says this is shutting us off from the world that's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Pressure is mounting on South Korea's president. Thousands of people attend a candlelight vigil in Seoul condemning Yoon Suk-yeol. Yoon's short-lived attempt to impose martial law has created a crisis for South Korea. Opposition parties have now started impeachment proceedings against him. Jan Commons in Broomby has more from Seoul.
Opposition lawmakers in South Korea gathered en masse today outside the country's National Assembly, chanting "Investigate treasonous acts." They're taking steps to force the resignation of President Yoon Suk-yeol and have submitted a bill calling for his impeachment after he issued a surprise martial law decree the day before. The move has plunged the nation into political uncertainty. Opposition leader Lee Jae-myung says the failure to enforce military power could spark instability and have critical consequences.
The risk of provoking North Korea and eventually leading to military conflict is significantly high. Dear citizens, we need your vigilance and solidarity.
Reports say all of Yoon's cabinet members have already offered to step down. His decision to impose martial law took people in South Korea by surprise. Kim Jong-un, who lives in the capital, says it left him concerned about the future of the country. Many others say they feel disturbed and frightened. South Korea is now facing international fallout. Reports say U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was planning to meet his South Korean and Japanese counterparts next week. But the developments have cast doubt over that and over other high-level meetings. The Canadian government issued a statement last night saying it hopes the situation will be resolved peacefully. Jan Clemson-Brimby for CBC News, Seoul.
France's government could fall today. A non-confidence vote will be held in Parliament. Prime Minister Michel Barnier's job is on the line. He tried to push through a key budget without a vote. This could make his time in office the shortest ever for a French Prime Minister. The CBC's Crystal Gomansing has the latest from London.
French Prime Minister Michel Barnier calling for some respect and a bit of calm in the National Assembly Tuesday. Calm is not on the political horizon. Barnier faces a non-confidence motion after pushing through budget measures without a vote. The far left and the far right are expected to join forces and bring down the government. On the streets of France, there's a sense of anger.
Because the Macron has a behavior which has always been quite, as if he was better than everyone.
I'm a bit afraid because it's the first time since 1962 it's happened.
President Emmanuel Macron called a snap election in the summer where no party won enough votes for a majority. He appointed Barnier as PM, and he's only been on the job for 3 months. In a national television French interview last night, Barnier said it was still possible that the government could survive.
C'est en effet possible, ça dépend.
He said it depends on MPs, each of whom have a responsibility to the French people and France, which is going through a serious period. France's national debt has reached a record high, 2 times higher than the cap established in the European Union's fiscal rules. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, London.
The Assembly of First Nations is meeting today in Ottawa. This is their first gathering since its contentious vote on child welfare reform. In October, the AFN rejected an offer from Ottawa worth nearly $50 billion. It is likely to be debated again today. Mary T.G. runs a First Nations Child and Family Services Agency in BC. She says the government's original offer was not good enough.
It looked at a 10-year process. We're saying that we need something that will stand the test of time because our children deserve that. This is the most important decision that chiefs will probably have to make in their life because we have to ensure discrimination ends and never happens again.
Some leaders in remote communities are anxious to get the funding soon. They say they don't have the financial resources and staffing to help children and their families in need. Time is running out for the AFN to secure a deal with the Liberal government. A federal election is expected in less than a year's time. Ukraine is top of mind as NATO's foreign ministers prepare to wrap up their meeting in Brussels today. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says now is the time for every NATO ally to boost its support for Ukraine.
We're at a critical moment for Ukraine. I think this is a time for every ally to lean in, not lean back. Every dollar that the United States puts into our shared security, whether it's deepening cyber defenses, whether it's strengthening our defense industrial base, it's an investment that redounds to the benefit of people across the alliance now and for years to come.
This is Blinken's final visit to NATO headquarters as Donald Trump prepares to take office. The president-elect has said he plans to roll back U.S. support for Ukraine. A second person nominated for a senior position in the Trump administration is bowing out. Chad Chronister was picked by the president-elect to head the Drug Enforcement Administration. He currently serves as a sheriff in Hillsborough County, Florida. But Chronister has now pulled himself out of consideration. He says there's more work to be done in his current role. His pick as DEA chief was a surprise to many. Chronister has no experience in international operations overseen by the DEA. Last month, Matt Gaetz dropped out of consideration for Attorney General. He was facing intense scrutiny about allegations of sex with an underage girl. An employee of Scouts Canada is suing the organization for years. He handled safety complaints within the organization, but says nothing prepared him for how traumatizing that work would be, and the mental health supports offered were not nearly good enough. Nicole Williams has his story.
I don't feel any self-worth or value. I feel like I'm a burden on my family.
Not much brings Stephen Greenside's comfort these days, as he talks about the job that changed his life forever. From 2016 to 2020, Greensides worked for Scouts Canada in its Safe Scouting department. There have been a multitude of criminal trials and reports highlighting allegations of sexual abuse within the organization, including the rape of minors. The department's job was to handle those complaints.
And it just really became focused on, with the grooming, the predator behaviors, the violations.
Greenside says the mental health resources offered through his benefits were limited. He's since been diagnosed with depression and PTSD. He's no longer able to work, and it's why Greensides is now suing Scouts Canada for up to $2 million in damages. Rob Talek is his lawyer.
Scouts Canada, as a sophisticated national organization, should have had regular checkups, should have rotated him out. We don't leave soldiers at the front line for years on end anymore. We rotate them out.
Scouts Canada denies all of Greenside's allegations against it. In its statement of defense, the organization says it's transparent with all incoming employees joining the Safe Scouting team. It provides workers with mental health resources like counseling, and at no time during 2016 to 2018 did Greensides raise any concerns with respect to his health. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Ottawa.
A recall has been issued for a bagged salad sold in several provinces. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency is recalling the sweet kale chopped kit over fears of salmonella exposure. So far, there have been no illnesses connected to the Taylor Farms product, but it is just the latest food recall over possible contamination. The CBC's Jennifer Yoon has more.
Carrots, cucumbers, and now sweet kale salad kits. In the span of just a few weeks, there have been several food recalls due to risk of salmonella or E. coli contamination. It's a rate similar to previous years, says Megan Griffin, a food safety recall specialist with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency.
There's some more consumer awareness, or they're being shared on social media, where we're not seeing an increase in food recalls right now.
I'm thinking that it's heightened awareness and more rigorous testing.
Some experts, like Laurie Burrows, a professor of biomedicine at McMaster University, say more recalls are actually good news.
I would take that as a sign of success, actually, that there are more recalls, because that means that those things are getting caught before they make people sick.
Preventing more outbreaks where people get sick from eating contaminated food could involve a crackdown of companies that mishandle food, says University of Guelph food science professor Keith Warner.
Some people suggest that litigation, like in the US, they're really strict now. They're actually calling for prosecutions of CEOs. We haven't got that far in Canada.
But that's only a part of the puzzle, he says. And other strategies, like better decontamination methods, are also important to stop the spread of foodborne illnesses. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Oh boy, it's windy in Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcuso. Welcome to your Wednesday morning in this province. Thanks for being with us. We're live downtown on CBC. This is Information Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. We're going to talk about a couple of schools that are affected by the windy conditions, visibility issues out there, and then the full forecast in a moment. Right now, I want to mention, though, what we have coming up on the show. If you are hoping to drive around to see the holiday lights, it can be really fun, but not everybody has the mobility to be able to do so. So it can be really hard for people who have accessibility challenges, or maybe they live alone. We're going to find out how a seniors group is making it a little bit easier to experience the merriment here in Winnipeg. Also, to a serious story, as CBC's been reporting, a woman was jailed for a month so officials could monitor her tuberculosis treatment. A Manitoba nurse who works with TB patients says misinformation about the disease can hamper effective treatment. So we're going to talk to them in just a moment here. Right now, Heather Wells has other headlines as well here in our province and stories that are developing. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Well, the head of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce says Manitoba needs a physical presence in Washington. That's why Lorne Remillard applauds the province's plan to open a trade office in the U.S. Capitol. We'll hear from him. And Scott Gillingham says Winnipeg's growth is straining the city's finances to the breaking point. The mayor warning of tough choices in store as the city prepares to release its budget next Wednesday. Those stories and more in our next local news at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
We mentioned a school closure here that Heather actually brought into me. So all schools are closed and no buses are running in Prairie Spirit School Division today. And the Prairie Rose School Division has closed St. Laurent School. That's in Region C. And then Region A and B buses are canceled today in that division. Here is why. Here's Heather again. Hi, Ed. More. Mennonite Collegiate Institute in Gretna. Let's add this to the list. School is closed there. And a field trip's been canceled. Oh, that was always so lousy when you're a kid, right, Corey? When you're like, yeah,
brutal.
I know. I have a field trip story actually that's going to actually lead us right into weather and more traffic.
Okay.
So we were on a field trip to Holiday Mountain when I was like in grade 9. Mm-hmm. And that is La Riviere, right? So if you ever ski there, when you come down one of the runs, you kind of end right at where the chalet is, right? Mm-hmm. Where everybody gathers at the end, and there's the racks of skis. So I was thinking about myself this morning because like I'm dressed kind of like a snowball, like in this fuzzy sweater, white fuzzy sweater. So if I was outside, I'd be like rolling around out there in the wind. But on that particular field trip, I totally had this bright turquoise 80s jacket on, like full on 1989 vintage. And I can't ski. I'm terrible at skiing. I'm nervous about speed. Imagine, right?
Yeah.
Me being nervous.
Not surprising.
No, right? So what do? Well, I tuck into a ball. Why did I do this? I don't know.
The fetal position is just instinctual.
But when you're skiing, it actually makes you go faster. So there's this turquoise ball in 1989 flying down the mountain, and I got stopped. I skied into the racks.
No.
Oh, yeah. And I just basically got stopped by the chalet. Like I put my hand on the wall, and everyone's standing there turning around like, what has just happened? And my face got all scraped up.
Well, glad you're okay.
Right? So I kind of wish that field trip had been canceled in hindsight. I won't lie. Because I'm thinking about it this morning. But so why don't you do traffic first and then I'll get into the forecast because there's some advisories here that we need to pass along to people. But you've been hearing from people out on the roadways. It is not fun out there.
No, it's not, especially on those highways. Just got a call from Craig who's making his way to Winnipeg from Ile-des-Chênes. So he says pretty much all the way on the highways around Ile-des-Chênes are like an ice rink and then he turned on 59 making his way southbound towards Winnipeg. Sure enough, also an ice rink. So you got to take it really slow if you're on 59 this morning. Also, a guy who goes by the commuting chopper pilot, he was in a car, not a chopper, was on the north and west perimeter. He said those are actually looking okay. But once you get on westbound number 1 heading towards Headingley from Winnipeg, also very, very poor conditions, poor visibility. Some cars have actually pulled over. So be careful on those highways. I imagine just all over. I'm looking at Manitoba 501, really poor condition just in general, visibility-wise, all over the province, including up around Thompson as well. So be careful out there. If you see anything else going on, be like Craig, be like the chopper pilot. 204-788-3093 is the number to call.
So we have a blowing snow advisory issued for Winnipeg, Steinbach, Selkirk, Dougal, Portage, Morden, Winkler, and areas around. So we're talking winds from 70 to 80 km. And then we have a snow squall watch that is also coming with these winds. That means 5 to 10 centimeters of snow squalls are possible. It could be upgraded to a warning later. And as you heard, if you're out there, then you're noticing all of this already. In Winnipeg, we can tell you it's cloudy right now. It's minus 13. Our temperature will drop to minus 14 with wind chill. It'll feel like minus 23. But the big news is the wind. And in Winnipeg currently at 7:15 a.m., it is gusting from the northwest at 76 kilometers per hour. And we just got a call, Corey, confirming Borderland School Division. All schools are closed there as well. So we'll update this list as we go here. So Borderland School Division is added to the list of closures this morning. Well, next on the program, a woman from northern Manitoba, as we've been reporting on CBC, spent a month in jail so officials could oversee her tuberculosis treatment. The woman, who does not have a criminal record, was incarcerated with several cellmates at the Women's Correctional Center. At one point, she was taken to a hospital appointment in Shackleton. shackles. She was also strip searched multiple times. She was released in late November, and on Monday, as you likely know, Premier Wapkanu called for an order that now prohibits the jailing of people with TB. Tina Campbell is here to talk, though, about something else. She's a registered nurse and a TB advisor for the Northern Intertribal Health Authority, and she says that misinformation about this disease can actually hamper effective treatment. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
What went through your mind when you heard this story?
While reading this article, it evoked a sense of empathy for the woman, and I can only imagine the frustration of that experience. As an Indigenous woman who has navigated healthcare and also been through TB treatment myself before, I know just how much a diagnosis of TB can, impact one's life. And a lot of effort, patience, and planning goes into ensuring a patient is properly supported throughout treatment. But also as a healthcare professional working in TB care for nearly 15 years, I also firsthand understand how understaffed and under-resourced TB programs continue to be and the challenges we face daily, so I can see the potential for something like this happening. Because it remains clear that a broader lack of awareness around TB diagnosis and treatment contributes to the challenges she faced. So somewhere along the line, it seems there may have been a policy issue or perhaps lack of capacity preventing her from receiving treatment in a more appropriate setting like at home, which is what our program strives to achieve in my region. Community members affected by TB can be treated at home. So this situation just underscores the urgent need for changes in how TB programs are delivered across Canada, ensuring more compassionate and effective care for individuals affected by TB. I also think about the potential impact that this incident may have on our TB elimination efforts today.
I'll ask you specifically about that in a moment, the impact it could have on the TB elimination efforts. But I want to just ask you, as you said, awareness is a big important part of this. So when you look at this from the basics, what is TB?
So TB is a bacterial infection caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So it primarily affects the lungs, but it can also impact other parts of the body. It is spread through the air when an infected person coughs, sneezes, or talks. Symptoms of TB include a persistent cough, chest pain, weight loss, fever, and night sweats. And in Canada, TB disproportionately affects Indigenous populations, particularly in northern and remote communities, as well as foreign-born individuals, who make up a significant portion of the new cases. And the TB incidence is notably higher among these groups due to factors such as socioeconomic conditions and limited healthcare access.
How is it treated?
So tuberculosis is treated with a combination of antibiotics, typically for a duration of 6 to 9 months, depending on the type of disease. Treatment begins with at least 4 antibiotics and can cause side effects such as liver toxicity, nausea, vomiting, rash, and even nerve damage. And direct observed therapy, or DOT, is used to ensure patients take their medication as prescribed, preventing the development of drug-resistant TB, which can occur if treatment is incomplete or incorrect, as we know with antibiotics. So this approach with DOT, it also improves treatment adherence in our practice and ensures better outcomes, especially in high-risk populations, and allows patients to be engaged with care throughout treatment.
You said that you're concerned that what developed here could hamper your efforts for TB elimination in the province. Can you elaborate on that a little?
Yes. So we do have, with TB, we have a lot of stigma and a lot of negative feelings towards TB care in general. With the Indigenous population specifically, because we've had the historical treatment in TB sanatoriums and Indian hospitals and even in residential schools. And with stigma, it creates a significant challenge for TB elimination. We might see an increase of people reluctant to seek care for fear of being judged. And this can delay care. It also allows the disease to spread within communities, making it more challenging and resource intensive to complete contact tracing. And also social isolation and discrimination. So people with TB may face these things or loss of community support because there's just a heavy stigma around it. And then it can hinder our public health campaigns. People might be avoiding, if they have any signs or symptoms of TB, to access healthcare now because of this potential of, of this happening, like being placed in jail for treatment.
What are some of the most common misconceptions about TB? You've addressed some of the stigma around it, but and you talked about the history, of course, the deep history as well. But I wonder whether or not people understand how it transmits, how it spreads, and what other misconceptions might there be out there.
Well, TB can affect anybody. I mean, it's found in these remote and isolated regions because of the factors I mentioned prior, and that's lack of access to care. And also, there's just this general awareness that needs to be, talked about TB, because TB is still here and it's still in many of our communities, and unfortunately, it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. And I think this situation just shows that the lack of, of awareness and knowledge on how to manage a TB patient and treatment, and also where to go to refer or to get support on how to manage somebody on TB treatment, especially in remote communities.
You said home-based care is the approach that you work with.
Yes.
In your view, when you look at how this could have been handled, obviously, what's the benefit of home-based care in that kind of an approach?
So in my region in northern Saskatchewan, we have community members that are trained to work alongside TB nurses and community health nurses to administer this treatment for their TB patients. And the benefit we see from having somebody from the community is that they know the community very well. People are comfortable approaching these community workers for anything related to the TB program, but also with that stigma attached, a lot of people don't want to go to the clinic to access TB treatment. They don't want anything to do with the TB program or to be associated with it. So we really do find success bringing the care to them at home. But again, it does utilize a lot of human resources, which a lot of these communities are severely understaffed and don't have the capacity to carry out a successful program like that. So I think that, generally everybody in healthcare needs to be aware of TB and kind of what to look out for in terms of screening and how to manage people on treatment.
Once you have TB, do you always have TB? You mentioned that you've had to have TB yourself, right?
Yes, I was diagnosed with latent TB in my 20s, and I was on treatment for 9 months. It greatly decreases your chances of ever developing active TB in the future. However, you can be re-exposed, and that's something as well that we see in a lot of communities as well.
How has the experience that you've had, your personal experience with latent TB, how has that shaped the work that you do now and your approach to it?
I can definitely, feel for clients and patients when they get a TB diagnosis. It's a lot to take in, and it does affect your day-to-day life because you're on treatment for 9 months. Like, this treatment is the first treatment that came out in the 1950s, so that alone needs to be, they need to find friendlier drug regimens for people on TB treatment. But, I had to coordinate with the healthcare team on, if I wanted to travel, then do I delay my treatment and make it a little bit longer, or just trying to navigate that as well? Nowadays, they do have things like electronic DOT, which you can virtually talk with a healthcare provider and take your medication that way, and it helps in certain instances where people are traveling or working away temporarily.
Tina, thank you very much for the interview today. I appreciate you giving us all this information, highlighting some of your concerns about it as well.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
That's Tina Campbell. She's a registered nurse. She's also a tuberculosis advisor for the Northern Intertribal Health Authority. If you want to read more about this developing story, cbc.ca/Manitoba. And we actually have another interview coming up about it as well. So stay tuned. That's just before 8 o'clock. I will mention briefly before sports here, all schools are closed. No buses running in Prairie Spirit School Division. Prairie Rose Division School Division says St. Laurent School, Region C closed. Region A and B buses are also canceled. And Mennonite Collegiate Institute in Gretna, school is closed. A field trip canceled. and Borderland School Division has called it. No school, everything's closed. That's because of the weather, really windy, really snowy and blowy. Let's get to morning sports and start in the NHL with Scott Regehr. Hello to you.
Hey, Marcy.
So the high-flying Jets have been grounded a little bit here.
Yeah, last night a 4-1 loss to St. Louis, meaning Winnipeg's now winless in 4 straight. The undoing last night, the second period, where the Jets managed all of 3 shots while St. Louis had 19. Not that Connor Hellebuck didn't do his best to keep the team in it. Ultimately, he was beaten twice in that frame. Head coach Scott Arniel had a pretty frank assessment of his team afterwards, although he wasn't pointing fingers at any one player.
We were trying to play cute hockey. We were trying to make highlight reel plays. We'll talk about it, but we can't dwell on it. We need to be better as a group, and that's the biggest thing, is that, we won all those games as a team, and this isn't going to change here. Everybody's had a little bit of fault at some of these losses, and now it's just a case of us sticking together and going on the next game on the road here and trying to find a way to win that hockey game.
Rubbing a little extra salt in the wound, Marcy. As Winnipeg's gone through this cold spell, rivals Minnesota have heated up. The Wild, who won in OT last night, have leapfrogged the Jets into first place in the Central. Winnipeg will have a chance at snapping this losing streak tomorrow in Buffalo against a very beatable Sabres team.
To the CFL now, where the news doesn't get much better for Winnipeg fans. And I posted on my Facebook page this morning, bye-bye Buck. Although it's hard not to be happy for Buck Pierce.
Yeah, for sure. Such a capable guy, and that's reflected in the Lions hiring him yesterday as their new head coach. A full circle moment for Pierce, Marcy, who, of course, broke into the league with the Leos. In a statement released yesterday, Pierce acknowledged that, saying, quote unquote, "I'm extremely excited and honored to take this next step in my coaching career with the organization that originally brought me here nearly 20 years ago." Not hard to see why BC coveted Pierce as offensive coordinator of the Bombers. He was the architect of the best offense in the league, more touchdowns than any other team for the last 3 straight years, and of course, had Grey Cup appearances in each of those. There could be more changes to the team off the field coming, Marcy. Reports are that the Ticats are officially going to announce Ted Govea as their new general manager later today. We knew this was coming. Success makes things like this happen, unfortunately, but I'm sure we'll hear that announcement a little later on.
Let's finish with basketball, actually. The Toronto Raptors continue to surprise.
They do, especially at home, Marcy, where they won again last night. After beating Indiana, Toronto is now 6-4 on their own court, a far cry from how they play on the road, where they've won once in 12 tries. Scotty Barnes did much of the damage last night against the Pacers. He had a career-high 35 points before speaking about his club's togetherness.
This team that we have, our chemistry is just so great. No matter how the outcome of the game go, we're just really so well connected together, and our plane rides back home, if we're on the road, we're still talking, communicating. This group is just so well connected, and I love that about this team. That's one of our best traits. When you have a well-connected team, that's something special to be a part of.
Well-connected definitely describes Barnes and R.J. Barrett playing together. They have been responsible for ball handling duties while point guard Emmanuel Quickley has been out injured, and they have excelled. Barrett himself had 29 points last night. But here's the thing. Team president Masai Ujiri said before this season started, this is a rebuilding year, which is code for we're going to lose and get a high draft pick as a result. The way things are going right now, though, Marcy, Toronto might have to tank on their tanking idea. They've been pretty darn good.
All right. Thanks, Scott.
You bet.
And it's Scott Regehr with Morning Sports. A couple of additional closures just came in before we turn to the news here. So the Franco-Manitoban School Division has said that these schools are closed today because of icy roads and impassable secondary roads. Aurel-les-Moines, Our Lady of Lourdes, and Gilbert-Rosset, as well as bus cancellation in the Saint Jean-Baptiste School. So the list is growing. We'll do the full list once again right after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 7:30, and we do have a blowing snow advisory for Winnipeg, the Pembina and Red River Valleys, parts of the Interlake as well. Blowing snow through the morning, wind gusts up to 80 kilometers an hour. That's going to reduce visibility as well. Our temperature falling to -14, about where we are right now. Scott Gillingham says Winnipeg's growth is straining the city's finances to the breaking point. The mayor warning of tough choices in stores. The city prepares to release its budget next Wednesday. Gillingham commissioned his own poll to find out how Winnipeggers want to deal with the revenue crunch. It suggests people strongly favor getting more money from the province rather than raising municipal taxes.
People understand that our city is growing. We've grown by 65,000 people in the last 3 years, and there's pressure on our city services to keep delivering services for a growing city.
A small ray of light breaking through the dark financial clouds is the police service revealing it has been able to reach its revenue targets by saving $2 million this quarter. Even so, recent projections suggest the city faces a deficit of $23 million this year. Construction to reopen Portage and Main to pedestrian traffic is underway, and it is going to impact traffic in that area. The city says starting today, crews are expected to install the first long-term lane closures. Traffic will be restricted at various locations around Portage and Main throughout the next 6 months. The head of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce says Manitoba needs a physical presence in Washington. That's why Lauren Remillard applauds the province's plan to open a trade office in the U.S. capital. He says during a recent trip there, American politicians knew about other provinces, but not Manitoba. Remillard says the person who runs the office is going to have to appeal to Donald Trump allies.
We need someone that speaks this new form of Republican messaging on Capitol Hill.
Remillard thinks Manitoba has several people who could fit that bill. The Pembina Trail School Division confirms it was the victim of a cybersecurity incident on its phone and network systems. The phone lines are up and running again, but the division is still working to restore other parts of the network. In a letter to parents, Pembina Trail says in order to secure the system, they've had to make a number of its services unavailable. It's asking parents to be on alert for any unusual activities or suspicious content on their network system and advises people not to open or click on any links they don't recognize and report them promptly to the division. A Lacabani gift shop owner says her business is struggling, in large part, she says, because Lacabani isn't doing enough to promote tourism. CBC's Emily Brass has that story.
I am planning to close the store on December 21st.
Lita Tom says inflation has kept people from visiting her shop called Manitoba Made, but she also blames local government.
People often will say, where is Lacabani? People know where Gimli is. I've been at fairs in Winnipeg where I've seen people specifically sitting at a table promoting Gimli. Why don't we do that?
So we're looking at attaching a floating dock system over the side here.
Deputy Mayor Keegan Svensson says the town has a plan to draw more tourists. It wants to build a recreational hub on land that's been sitting mostly unused for about 17 years. Ideas include kayak and e-bike rentals and a skating trail, but Svensson says there's no clear date on when work will begin.
Right now we're just talking about the plans of it, but plans are nothing until the money's on the table.
Plans that come too late to save Tom's Boutique.
We need places like My Little Shop. So you can go ahead and tap right there.
Emily Brass, CBC News, Lacabani.
Pressure is mounting on South Korea's parliament. Thousands of people attending a candlelight vigil in Seoul condemning the president, Yoon Suk-yeol. Yoon's short-lived attempt to impose martial law has created a crisis for South Korea. Opposition parties now are starting impeachment proceedings against him. You can hear the latest on this story as well as other national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. It wasn't until the third period this happened.
Mark Scheifele's first in 7 games, and the Jets are on the board.
Mark Scheifele with the Jets' first goal of the game on TSN. Even so, the Jets fall to the St. Louis Blues 4-1. Winnipeg also falls out of top spot in the Central Division. That now belongs to Minnesota. It's the Jets' 4th straight loss. Head coach Scott Arniel says his team can get that winning streak back.
At the end of the day, we need to be better as a group, and that's the biggest thing. Is that we won all those games as a team, and we're not. This isn't going to change here. These games have everybody's had a little bit of fault at some of these losses, and now it's just a case of us sticking together and going on the next game on the road here and trying to find a way to win that hockey game.
The Jets play tomorrow night in Buffalo. You can find more Manitoba news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
Well, we're going to go to a different kind of ice now, from hockey to the streets of Winnipeg and the highway conditions. We've had a lot of calls. We actually also have some school cancellations and buses that aren't running. So let's first get to what Corey's been hearing on the commuter line, and then we'll get that cancellation list on the air.
Yeah, just lots of really slippery highways on there. Pretty much if you're hitting the highways this morning, you can just assume that it's not going to be ideal conditions. Heard that Highway 16 from a caller is very slippery, very poor visibility right now. He actually called and said he's actually turning around once he hit Highway 16. It's that bad. Also, Highway 59, Craig says that heading southbound towards Winnipeg, really, really bad right now. He was heading here from Ile-des-Chênes, so that whole area is an ice rink, he says. Also, Highway 1 westbound from Winnipeg to Headingley, heard from the commuting chopper pilot was his name, and he said that that's also very, very poor conditions. Perimeter actually not so bad. North and west perimeter were okay, but that west highway number 1 between Winnipeg, Headingley, not great conditions at all. Poor visibility, very slippery. So look out for that. If you see anything else going on out there, you can give us a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
School cancellations. Borderland School Division is closed today. All schools are closed and no buses running there. Also, the Prairie Spirit School Division is closed today. Prairie Rose School Division has St. Laurent School in Region C closed. Region A and B buses are canceled. Mennonite Collegiate Institute in Gretna, school is closed, so there's a field trip that was planned that is canceled. And in the Franco-Manitoban School Division, bus cancellation for St. Jean-Baptiste School. In addition, these schools are closed today because of, as we've been mentioning, icy roads and impassable secondary roads. Aurel-les-Moines, Our Lady of Lourdes, and Gilbert-Rosset. So all of those closures because of the weather. The actual weather, quick look at our regional forecast. Minus 13 in Winnipeg, cloudy. Winds are northwest at 76K already. So 60% chance of flurries for today. We're going to be around minus 14. It's going to stay windy. Brandon, local blowing snow this morning. Flurries. Your winds also gusting up to 70K. Temperature for you is going to fall as well to minus 18 this afternoon in Brandon. As you can imagine, with wind chills, bundle up. It's going to feel a lot colder on exposed skin. And up in Thompson, periods of light snow should end this morning, and then your winds are going to be 40 to 60, gusting from the northwest. This afternoon for you, your temperature will fall to minus 23, and with wind chill, it'll feel like minus 35. Now, a lot of this is implied, but there's a blowing snow advisory out there for Winnipeg, Steinbach, Selkirk, Portage, Morden, and there's snow squall watches as well in place for the areas around the arm of Portage-la Prairie, St. Clements, Broken Head, Alexander, Victoria Beach, and Lacabani. So that means that 5 to 10 centimeters in snow squalls could be possible as everything's whipping around out there. So it's a classic winter day. You know what sounds good on a day like this? Getting into a warm bus and going to look at holiday lights. So let's go there next. December is a time of cold nights and bright lights. A lot of homes around Winnipeg specifically are beautifully decorated for the season, but it can be tough to get out and see them, particularly for seniors who struggle with mobility. So my next guest is here to talk about something that is helping with that. The Transcona Council for Seniors has organized a Christmas Lights Tour. And to talk about it via Zoom, Colleen Tackaberry is here. Hello there.
Hi, good morning.
So tell me a little bit about where this tour is going to go.
Well, we're going to actually go all over Winnipeg. I look at the Winnipeg Christmas map and select the most beautifully decorated homes that we can find on the map, and then off we go. We leave Transcona about 4:30, and we're out there for about 5 hours. So we go to Island Lakes, there's a great one there. We also tour Transcona itself because Transcona is, I think, known for its great lights. And then we'll go out to the light display out at the Assiniboine Downs and just go through there. That's always a really nice treat. We'll come back down Main Street and see the Christmas tree. So we kind of do it all.
What's the interest been so far this year in this?
Well, so far, our first bus is full, and usually we just take one bus, but we are taking a waiting list. So if we get enough folks, we'll actually take 2 buses.
How many folks can you take on the tour?
So in each bus, there are 54 seats. So 54 seniors, and then my associate and myself will be there to help with anything that needs to be taken care of on the bus.
And are folks, are you on the bus literally for 5 hours? There must be some stretch breaks and things in between, I'm guessing.
We do some stretch breaks. We do some exercises in our seats. We have a little bathroom break here and there. There is a bathroom on the bus, which is very welcome. And we also have a snack because we're leaving at 4:30, so it's kind of over the supper hour. So we provide a snack, and Save on Foods is very kindly helping us out with that.
Well, what's the reaction from those who've attended the event in the past?
They just keep asking. They start asking about October. So are we having the Christmas light bus? Are we going on to see the lights? And it's a highlight. It really is. And, as you said, many seniors are no longer driving themselves. So they can't just jump in their car and do a spin around town and see the lights. So this is an opportunity for them to get out and see the lights. And I think Winnipeg is especially beautiful at this time of year. It also gives them an opportunity to maybe even make a new friend because they're going to be sitting beside somebody. Not everybody comes with a friend, and so they're sitting beside a person, and that's one of the things that in years gone by, they've made a connection on the City Lights tour, and these friends, they stay in connection afterwards. So that's a really lovely thing to have happen as well.
And those connections can be so critical, right, for folks that could be suffering, I shouldn't say suffering, could be struggling, though, maybe with, maybe with isolation because of mobility or maybe with some loneliness as well. You offer a number of services. Just want to look beyond what we're talking about in terms of the Lights Tour. So the Transcona Council for Seniors, what kinds of other things are in demand that you're working on?
So we have a congregate meal program. We have volunteer transportation where we have volunteer drivers that take people to their medical appointments. We have all kinds of exercise groups. One that we've started this fall is chair yoga, and it's extremely popular. We have Drums Alive, yoga, Zumba, Tai Chi, line dancing, you name it, we have it. Pickleball is another one for our more agile seniors, and that's very, very popular. We also have art classes. We do some technology training. We have a men's shed, and that's a group for men specifically, which is very popular. We also have support groups. So we do a vision impaired group. We have a hard of hearing group. And we have an Alzheimer's caregivers group, which is actually meeting this morning.
I know that in the city of Winnipeg, demographically, St. James used to always be the neighborhood where we would say has the highest population of seniors in the city. But what does that demographic look like in Transcona?
I think that we're about 20% of the demographic. There is lots of seniors in Transcona.
Do you need volunteers? You're just mentioning so many different programs. I'm wondering how you keep everything going.
So we have a lot of volunteers, and our programs could not run without volunteers. So we're always looking for volunteers. If somebody's looking in this morning and they're thinking, maybe I've got a few hours here and there, we're always happy to have people come out and join us. And if we're not doing something that you can do, maybe we can start something new. And speaking of starting something new, January, we're going to I shouldn't say new, we're reinstating our stroke recovery group on January 7th. And that's a really important group where people who've had a stroke, they just come together and they support one another.
I understand you're looking specifically maybe for drivers that could help with medical appointments, but also for retired nurses. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. We would love to have a retired nurse or two come and join us with our Alzheimer's group because we need, that's also one that we're restarting, and we need people to help us, just do some programming with the folks that come that have Alzheimer's and just keep them happy and feel safe for the hour and a half that they're with us. And volunteer drivers are always needed. We can never have enough because what we do is if we have enough for our medical program, we expand it and we do grocery shopping. We do getting people to their appointments, to our activities. You mentioned isolation, and one of the programs that is being started province-wide is social prescribing. and that is getting doctors aware of the programs in the communities. And so instead of prescribing another pill, they'll perhaps prescribe, a social activity. They'll get us in touch with the resource finders within the province.
Appreciate all of this morning, Colleen, and enjoy the light tours that are coming up. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
That's Colleen Tackaberry. She's a resource coordinator for the Trans-Dakota Council for Seniors. She joined us via Zoom this morning. So their first sold-out bus tour is happening December 16th. But as you heard, if there's enough interest, a second tour could be offered. And they have a whole bunch of other programs that are supporting community. You can find out more about all of it at transconaseniors.ca.
This winter, help us make the season kind by supporting Harvest Manitoba. I'm Vince Barletta, CEO of Harvest Manitoba. All it takes is one can of food, $1, or even 1 hour of your time. Join CBC as we donate a day of programming in support of Harvest Manitoba December 6th. Find ways to give to Harvest Manitoba at cbc.ca/kindmb.
So that is Friday morning. Make a date. Minus 13 in Winnipeg, cloudy out there. Coming up after 8 o'clock on our program this morning, known simply as Starman, renowned astronomer Wilfred Buck is said to, quote, breathe, dream, and live the stars. Now audiences are going to be able to breathe in that magic in a new documentary about him. And we're going to talk to him and the director of the documentary as well. So that's coming up right after 8 o'clock here on CBC. It is 13 minutes to 8 right now. And this is a bit bittersweet, what's about to be said on the radio here, because we're talking about a show that's coming up. Beautiful, lovely, but the artist in question, the local artist, is about to move out of Manitoba. I'm talking about Winnipeg funk soul pop artist Jace Bodner, who's going to play the new venue, Side Stage in South Osborne. The show's coming up tomorrow night. But as I alluded to, if you love Jace, then get out and see it, because it's his last show before he's going to be moving out of the province for a time. Here's a tune from his newest EP. This is Jace Bodner and Don't Ruin the Love.
After Michael left the office and they made anything boast, would you say that it was as good? I thought you'd say that it was. And Walking Dead, it kept on going until you no longer cared. It used to be the biggest show on TV, then it was kinda just there. And I'm a massive fan of Star Wars, but the new ones are trash. Should have ended with the Ewoks. They could have left it at that. It's been so lovely having you in my life, but all our seasons are gone. And if we refuse to let it be done, then we will ruin the love. Baby, don't 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 ruin the love. If Walter White kept making blue math till Jesse Pinkman was gray, if they padded out the series cause they didn't want to end it, would its legacy still be the same? And did we really need another after Home Alone 5? And can we quit changing out the main kid in these films cause we're making Macaulay Culkin cry? And can we talk about The Simpsons? On season 33, cause Maggie was a baby in 1987 and she still is. Can you explain that to me? Don't need a cheap continuation, cause what we had was enough. And if we keep on trying to force it, then we will ruin the love. Baby, don't 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 ruin the love.
Jace Bodner and Don't Ruin the Love. That is a song from his newest EP. And Jace is playing in South Osborne tomorrow night. It's a new venue called Side Stage. Enjoy it if you're going, especially because it's his last show in Manitoba as he prepares to move out of province. It's 10 to 8 right now on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show. And behind the glass right now, Kevin Ipatebo, control on YouTube if you're watching, and also Corey Funk, who's covering for Abby this morning. In Winnipeg, minus 13, I continue to tell you and remind you because of the blowing snow out there as well. So Brandon's drifting snow right now, minus 15. Thompson, light snow blowing is minus 17. And we have an advisory out with blowing snow. We've had calls, people saying visibility's poor in a lot of parts on the highways, and people pulling over, some people turning around. So it's that kind of morning out there in parts of Manitoba. Please use the commuter line if you need it, 788-3093. Well, next on the program, as we've been, as you heard or may have heard earlier in the show, we've been talking about what happened to Geraldine Mason. The medical community is reacting to the news that Geraldine, a woman from northern Manitoba, spent a month in jail because she was not taking her TB medication, tuberculosis medication. Mason was detained in late October to treat her TB. She was strip searched, and at one point she was taken to the hospital in shackles. Now, earlier this week, the province's chief medical officer signed a directive banning incarcerating someone under the Public Health Act. Joel Kentner is with us next, associate professor at the University of Manitoba in the College of Medicine. He's here to talk about the Public Health Act and also what it can do and what it cannot do and what it should do to keep you safe, to keep the public safe. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So just looking at this case, I mean, I know that the I-team already looked at when this has happened before. So the I-team found in looking at Geraldine's case that there are media reports that date to 2008 that show it did happen before in Manitoba. And in 2011, we also understand a TB patient was jailed. The medical officer at that time said there had been 5 to 10 such cases over the preceding, years leading up to that 2011 case. What is your sense of why we have cases like this when you look at the act? Because most people think it's supposed to protect people from something like this.
Well, if you're asking why do we have that many occasions where someone has detained and put in a correction facility for that detention, is the purpose of it, and it is certainly stated in the Public Health Act that this is an option for a medical officer of health, is to protect the public when there's considered to be a threat. And the Public Health Act is quite clear that, first of all, the medical officer of health has to believe that the person has an infectious disease that is contagious and that it poses a threat to the public. Now, the second one is a matter of judgment. First one's usually fairly easy to determine. And most of the time, the judgment that is applied finds another way to protect the public without having to incarcerate the person in a correctional institute. But on some occasions, that judgment does result in a decision to do that. And, I can't speak to this case about the details of that or any of the other ones specifically, but the considerations for that decision would usually include, first of all, safety to the patient themselves, safety to others who are responsible for observing or treating the patient, and the availability of other resources or places where that kind of close monitoring and protection can occur. And that is a very rare decision. We have now about 200 new cases of tuberculosis per year. So if you think back over those years, the frequency of that happening amongst thousands of cases is very, very low.
We had a nurse on who was talking all about this earlier in the show, and she was mentioning the resources that you're alluding to now, the lack of resources, rather, being one of the biggest issues around this, because she said that they have a program to, visit people in their homes to make sure they're taking their medication, for example. What are other options, and could the Public Health Act now, explore that? Should we rewrite part of the act so that we make sure other options are enlisted before something like this happens again?
Well, the Act is enabling when it comes to different ways of exercising that control. So, in the language of the Act right now, that detention can happen in a hospital or other facility. Now, other facility is not defined in the Act specifically, but if you apply the most general definition to facility, it could be anywhere. It could be in someone's home. It could be in a hospital. It could be in another healthcare facility. All of that is enabled or allowed under the Act. and so it's really a matter of those who decide or can deliver health services or work with others in other facilities to find alternatives, and that's what mostly has happened, as was described by your guest earlier. That there's many options, and most of them, almost all of them, find their way to success. And in fact, of the recently, the rates of 200 cases per year, which has been fairly stable for many years in Manitoba, the vast majority, more than 95%, I think, are successfully treated.
I have to ask you about what has changed already here, right? So the province's chief medical officer signing this directive banning incarceration of someone under the Public Health Act. But on the face of it, that seems that this would be, okay, they've dealt with it. However, if you still have a need to sort of respond to some, and you don't have the resources to respond, what's your reaction to the ban going into place?
Well, I think like all directives, and I think directive is the word that's been issued, there hasn't been a change in the Public Health Act, to my knowledge. That's an option going forward. There's always room for judgment and exceptions, which could be considered, in my opinion. I think the message is this should be absolutely last resort and hopefully never happens again. But in a situation where there isn't another alternative that is considered more appropriate, I'm sure that there could be discussion within public health at the level of the chief public health officer and with the Minister of Health to look at the situation. And there's a decision like this, in my opinion, would not prevent those kinds of exceptions or judgments being used. Hopefully it won't be necessary. But if in the judgment of the authorities that it is the best or only safe alternative, then I'm sure that possibility would exist.
Thank you very much for being with us this morning. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
That's Joel Kettner, an associate professor at the University of Manitoba in the College of Medicine. It is now 3 minutes to 8 o'clock. Heather Wells joins us. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Scott Gillingham says Winnipeg's growth is straining the city's finances to the breaking point. The mayor warning of tough choices in store as the city prepares to release its budget next Wednesday. The Pembina Trail School Division confirms it was the victim of a cybersecurity incident on its phone and network systems. Phone lines are now up and running, but the division is still working to restore other parts of its network. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
In the forecast, I've been mentioning it a lot, but cloudy minus 13. We're going to be minus 14 for the day. The temperature is going to be steady there. Wind chill will feel like minus 23, and the winds are going to gust up to 80 km per hour. We have a blowing snow advisory. On the highways, issues with visibility, with traction, with ice. 788-3093 if you do have any problems out there that you need to report. So take it easy and check the 511, the whole highway listings for Manitoba before you head out. School cancellation. So no school and no buses in Prairie Spirit School Division or in Borderland. Prairie Rose School Division has canceled school in St. Laurent. That is St. Laurent School, Region C. And then Region A and B have no buses. Mennonite Collegiate Institute in Gretna is closed. There's a field trip that's been canceled there. And Franco-Manitoban School Division has closed Mount, Our Lady of Lourdes, and Gilbert-Rousset, as well as Saint Jean Baptiste. Bus cancellation there. Stay with us. We're going to explore a new documentary and talk to Wilfred Buck after 8.
On CBS, she'll be here to tell you her story.
What can I bring to the potluck, Nana? She's like, napkins. Can you handle that?
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland. And on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
It's called Cozy Tech. Video games and AI bots designed to bring out warm and fuzzy feelings. Might feel nice to play something like Animal Crossing. But the tech writer Carl Chayka says this is shutting us off from the world. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The Assembly of First Nations is gathering for the first time since October's contentious vote on child welfare reform. At the time, First Nations leaders rejected an offer from Ottawa worth nearly $50 billion. The AFN is expected to debate the issue again today. As Olivia Stefanovich reports, the goal is to secure a new deal before the next federal election.
I was kind of disappointed.
Archie Wabass says he left the last gathering of the Assembly of First Nations feeling uneasy. He's the chief of Woonaman Lake First Nation, a fly-in community in northwestern Ontario.
Right now, I don't have the financial resources and staffing and the proper tools and resources to help children in need.
Wabass says Ottawa's $47.8 billion offer would make all the difference in helping First Nations families and children stay together by keeping food on the table, a roof over their heads, and having counseling services available. But the deal was rejected by AFN delegates last fall.
It looked at a 10-year process. We're saying that we need something that will stand the test of time because our children deserve that.
Mary T.G. runs a First Nations Child and Family Service Agency in BC. She says the AFN needs to demand a better deal, one that guarantees funding beyond the next decade and ensures it is spread equally across the country.
This is the most important decision that chiefs will probably have to make in their life because we have to ensure discrimination ends and never happens again.
But time is running out for the AFN to secure a deal with the Liberal government. A federal election is expected in less than a year's time, and the Conservatives aren't making any promises on First Nations child welfare reform. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Pressure is mounting on South Korea's president. Protesters from South Korea's biggest labor union are among those calling for Yoon Suk-yeol to resign. They are vowing to strike unless he does. Yoon's attempt to impose martial law has created a crisis for South Korea. Opposition parties have now started impeachment proceedings against him. Jan Cummins in Broomby has more from Seoul.
Opposition lawmakers in South Korea gathered en masse today outside the country's National Assembly, chanting "Investigate treasonous acts." They're taking steps to force the resignation of President Yoon Suk-yeol and have submitted a bill calling for his impeachment after he issued a surprise martial law decree the day before. The move has plunged the nation into political uncertainty. Opposition leader Lee Jae-myung says the failure to enforce military power could spark instability and have critical consequences.
The risk of provoking North Korea and eventually leading to military conflict is significantly high. Dear citizens, we need your vigilance and solidarity.
Reports say all of Yoon's cabinet members have already offered to step down. His decision to impose martial law took people in South Korea by surprise. Kim Byung-in, who lives in the capital, says it left him concerned about the future of the country. Many others say they feel disturbed and frightened. South Korea is now facing international fallout. Reports say U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was planning to meet his South Korean and Japanese counterparts next week. But the developments have cast doubt over that and over other high-level meetings. The Canadian government issued a statement last night saying it hopes the situation will be resolved peacefully. Jan Clementon Brimby for CBC News, Seoul.
One of the main opposition parties in Georgia says its leader has been attacked by police. In a social media post, the Coalition for Change party says Nika Guavaramia was beaten unconscious and then detained. The alleged attack took place in the capital, Tbilisi. For almost a week, there have been violent clashes between police and protesters every night. Demonstrators are angry the Prime Minister has suspended talks on joining the European Union. They claim the government is aligning the country closer to Russia. NATO members are promising to provide air defense systems to Ukraine. Foreign ministers are into a second day of talks in Brussels. Secretary General Mark Rutte says all members are determined to protect Ukraine's infrastructure from Russian attacks.
There was a clear agreement on the table last night that to help Ukraine, particularly with its infrastructure, has to be a priority. And I'm confident that allies will follow up in the coming days and weeks in making sure that whatever they can supply to Ukraine will be supplied.
British Foreign Minister David Lammy is also attending the meeting in Brussels. He says Russia remains a threat to all NATO allies.
There is one country
whose hand is in so much of it, and that is Russia. And that is why, as we meet here discussing these important issues, it's hugely important that we step up defence spending across NATO allies particularly.
Lammy says the United Kingdom is working to increase its NATO spending. He is encouraging all allies to do the same. The U.S. Supreme Court is beginning hearings today into a transgender rights case. It is a challenge to a Tennessee law that bans gender-affirming care for minors. Critics want the justices to declare the 2023 law unconstitutional. Richard Madden is following the case from Washington. And Richard, just what is that issue in the Supreme Court hearing?
Yeah, it's a high-profile case, and the arguments will focus on whether state laws that ban gender-affirming treatment for minors violates the federal Equal Protection Clause under the 14th Amendment that requires the government to treat people the same. Now, this challenge was brought by 3 families affected by a law passed by Tennessee's Republican-led State House a year ago that bans gender-affirming care for minors and penalizes doctors who provide treatment like hormone therapy or puberty blockers for youth under 18 with gender dysphoria. But the law does not apply to cisgender youth. One of the plaintiff's lawyers who will argue before the conservative majority high court says that's discrimination. Here's lawyer Chase Strangio.
This is a law that bans medical treatment only when it is prescribed inconsistent with an individual's sex. Our argument is that that treats people differently because of their sex.
Now, Tennessee state lawyers are expected to argue the law doesn't discriminate because it applies to both boys and girls. And the law, they say, protects children from irreversible, unproven medical procedures.
It'll be several months before the court decides, but what are the broader implications here?
Yeah, that's true. Don't expect a ruling anytime soon, but when the court does make their decision, it could have a major impact to the more than 24 Republican-led states that have passed similar laws. And it also comes a few weeks before Republicans regain control of Congress and President-elect Donald Trump returns to the White House, and he's vowed to further restrict treatments for transgender minors and ban transgender athletes from women's sports.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. Indigenous leaders from northern Alberta want an apology and action from Ottawa. A parliamentary committee is hearing testimony on contamination at a Transport Canada wharf. Local communities say they were never told about the contamination dating back decades. As Kate Kyle reports, they're demanding remediation.
This is the water we drink, swim, and play in.
Band councillor Tammy Tuckaroo reads a statement from a Mikisew Cree First Nation member.
This dock provides connection to my way of life for survival. Once again, the government failed our First Nation.
They are concerned about the Transport Canada wharf called the Big Dock in Fort Chipewyan, Alberta. Used as a boat launch, it's also a gathering place for swimming and harvesting. The site has been contaminated for years. But the Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation, the Fort Chipewyan Métis, and the Mikisew Cree First Nation all say they learned about it this past summer. A 2017 report commissioned by the Department of Transportation found heavy contaminants from fueling barges and other spills. Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation Chief Alan Adam.
Well, water contamination in the community of Fort Chip is at a third world level.
In a letter emailed to Fort Chipewyan leaders, Canada's Transport Minister Anita Anand said the studies have not identified any risk to human health. Toxicologist Mandy Olsgaard testified they can't know that for sure.
The risk assessment did not assess or provide results for potential risks from the ingestion of traditional foods and medicines. It did not assess the potential risks from contact with contaminated soils or the surface water.
In a statement to CBC, Transport Minister Anita Anand said they will work to accelerate remediation efforts. Anand will be called to testify on Thursday. Kate Kyle, CBC News, Yellowknife.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
We We've got a blustery morning across Manitoba, folks. Welcome to Wednesday. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC's Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Thanks for coming along with us this morning. They've also just updated our forecast. It's going to be even colder than we thought in the city of Winnipeg, and we do have some advisories and school cancellations. It's one of those winter days. So stay tuned. We'll walk you through all of it so you can have a good, safe day in our province. This half hour of the program, we've got an awesome feature interview I'm really looking forward to. He describes himself as being, quote, fresh out of the bush, partly civilized, colonized, and displaced. Respected local astronomer Wilfred Buck is going to join us to talk about a new documentary all about his life. So that is coming up. He's also joined by the director of the doc. So that is coming up straight ahead. Right now, though, we're going to plug into news headlines, and then we'll get your school cancellations on the air. Stay with us right here on CBC. So for the news headlines, let's go to Heather Wells. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the head of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce says Manitoba needs a physical presence in Washington. That's why Lorne Remillard applauds the province's plan to open a trade office in the U.S. Capitol. He says during a recent trip there, American politicians knew about other provinces, but not Manitoba. The owner of a unique gift shop in Lacabani says her business is struggling, partly because of the economy, but also, she says, it's because of the local government's lack of a tourism strategy. We'll hear from the owner of Manitoba Made, who says businesses like hers can't survive on long weekend tourism. Those stories and more coming up at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, if you're watching on YouTube, you might see all these papers because everything keeps changing here. So let's start with the forecast. That's changed just in the last 10 minutes. We today now are going to have a temperature that's going to fall to minus 16 this afternoon, with wind chill will feel like minus 31 in Winnipeg. And we still have a 60% chance of flurries with us, and winds will be northwest gusting 60 to 80 k. Right now they're northwest at 71 k, and it's minus 13 in Winnipeg. We do have the blowing snow advisory for Winnipeg, Steinbach, Selkirk, Beausejour, Portage, Winkler, Altona, and areas. Those winds are going to stay strong through the day, up to 80 k as mentioned. And then we've got snow squall issues, right? Because it's going to blow around out there, 5 to 10 centimeters. This is for the arm of Portage, St. Clements, Broken Head, Black River, Alexander, Victoria Beach, and Lacabani. So it is that day out there. School cancellations look like this, and bus cancellations. So Prairie Spirit School Division, there's no school, there's no buses. Prairie Rose School Division says St. Laurent School, Region C is closed. Region A and B buses are canceled. Mennonite Collegiate Institute in Gretna, school closed, and I'm sorry, students, the field trip's been canceled for you. That's always disappointing. They'll reschedule, I'm sure. Franco-Manitoban School Division finally says that due to icy roads and impassable secondary roads, Aurel-le-Mont School, Our Lady of Lourdes, and Gilbert-Rosset are all closed. Borderland School Division's closed, and Saint Jean-Baptiste, there's a bus cancellation there as well for the division. So Corey's been taking calls from the roadways. People still turning around and pulling over and all that.
Yeah. Throughout the morning, there's been a lot of issues. Pretty much if you're hitting the highways today, you could pretty much just assume that it's not going to be a great drive for you. But here's a couple calls I got about particularly bad areas. Highway 1 from Winnipeg to Headingley, heard it's quite bad. A lot of people even pulled over. As well, Highway 59 from Ildeshane to Winnipeg, also very slippery. I heard from Craig that it's an ice rink is what he says. And then also Highway 16 got a call from someone who said they actually just turned around because the visibility was so bad. Here in the city, got a call from Kelso. He also just said it's very, very slow going. Northbound St. Anne's heading to Fermor, and wasn't sure totally why. I think traffic's just slow. So heads up there. He said he was just waiting there for like 5 minutes. So northbound St. Anne's to Fermor, heading that way, very, very slow. If you see anything else going on, do give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
Well, he looks to the stars to impart wisdom and share Indigenous knowledge about the universe. And now respected astronomer Wilfred Buck from Opaskwayak Cree Nation is the star of his own story in a newly released documentary that's all about his life. Let's have a listen, just a piece of this.
Our people were never lost. That means anywhere they went was home. Our skies had all the stories that we hear about. Other people were telling me about my people, about what I believe.
found something that was missing in my life. It was a sacred thing, and it was a powerful thing. In order to walk away, you can't just change one or two things. You have to change everything.
That's just a little bit of the trailer for the documentary that's been made about Wilfred Buck, and it's all about his life. Wilfred Buck, the documentary of the same name, is streaming right now on Crave if you want to check it out. It's been adapted from Wilfred's memoir called I Have Lived 4 Lives. It's the 96-minute film. Moves between earth and sky and past and present, and it changes tone. There's like these beautiful images of the prairies that I just loved, and then there's really a lot of footage from the 70s and what that time was like as people were forced off the land and into communities and colonized. It also, though, brings the ancient teachings of Indigenous astronomy and cosmology to life in just a gorgeous way. And the stars have aligned for us today because we actually have director Lisa Jackson on with us as well. Hi there via Zoom.
Hi, nice to be on the radio with you.
Thank you for being with us. And sitting right beside you is Wilfred Buck. Good morning.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
Oh, thank you for being here. I know you're both very busy. You're in Mississauga this morning. What was this like, Wilfred, opening up in such a personal way? Obviously you do a lot of speaking, but this was about your life. So what was that like for you?
Well, the hardest part of that is actually putting it down to paper and sitting there and thinking about it, and then reliving all those memories, and then trying to link everything together, and then putting it on film. That's Lisa's department, and she did an excellent job at that.
This is adapted, obviously, as I mentioned, from one of your books. So it takes a dual approach of telling your story. So it does weave in the voice of you when you were young, a young Wilfred known as Smokey, and then to present day Wilfred. How helpful was that in sort of, an approach to tell your story?
I think it was done really, really masterfully in that blending the time continuum together, because one of the our people's perspective in our reality is that it's a time continuum, and the past, the present, and the future is all part of your reality, and it affects how you think, how you move forward, how you act, what you do, how you respond.
What did you mean in the trailer? I'm going to turn to you in a moment, Lisa, but I just want to ask you, Wilfred, we heard this quote, right? You can't just change one or two things. You have to stretch to change everything. What did you mean by that?
Well, that was a teaching given to me by a Cree elder by the name of Bernadette Wheeler. And I was going through a really, really hard time at one point in my life, with alcoholism, with drugs, with violence, with the whole scene. And I had tried previous attempts. I made previous attempts at sobering up, quitting drugs, quitting that lifestyle, but I never succeeded. And because I never succeeded was one of the main reasons was because I didn't change everything. I just tried to change one thing at a time and kept doing the other things. And it wasn't until she told me that you have to change your whole world. You can't just change one thing. You can't quit drinking and hang around people who drink. You can't quit drinking and hang around people drink and go to bars. You have to change everything. So you have to build a whole new life.
Lisa, why did you want to tell Wilfred's story, and what do you hope people take away from your doc?
Well, when I read Wilfred's memoir, that was what made me want to make the film. I found that the story was so unique to what he went through, but it was also in so many ways the story of many Indigenous people across Canada. I'm Anishinaabe from Southern Ontario on my mom's side. And the story through the decades was one that felt familiar to me, even if some of the particulars were different. My mom was a residential school survivor. She also started to reclaim culture later on into the 70s, as many people did. But it was his writing that really made me want to make the film. The way that Wilfred writes this incredible story, it reminded me of the Beat Poets or Jack Kerouac or Hunter S. Thompson, like that. So it had this really freewheeling, like it seemed like a Hollywood movie almost in the reading. But to also echo what Wilfred said, what he did masterfully, which I tried to honor in the film, was that he wrote, and it would be a story of him in the 60s going through some specific experience, and then it would go back to the signing of a treaty, and then it would go forward. And so the history was constantly interwoven with his life as he lived it. And so in the film, we use archival footage and these stylized reenactments to evoke his earlier life. And we have two incredible actors who play him as a child and as a young man. And then we followed Wilfred today with the super important work that he's been doing, both as a star educator and as a ceremonial leader.
It's interesting that you talked about sort of capturing that sort of Jack Kerouac, that whole vibe, because I wrote down to ask you about that, you know, the music you chose, the sort of the way that the 70s reenactments look like. It's hard to tell sort of that is reenactment stuff because it's done so well. It's got that vibe. Especially just sort of, I mean, for Manitobans, right? It's sort of like, oh, wait a minute, like Opaskwayak back then, and you know, and some of the histories and such. You're a reluctant role model, Wilfred. You share this. You said you kind of tried to outrun what your destiny was to lead for like 4 years before you sort of came to peace with passing on your knowledge and such. What does it mean to you now to have this shared, not only your knowledge, which is the work you do now, but to have your story, you know, be out there to have an impact, as Lisa said, on so many in Canada?
Well, it's slowly sinking in. In the last little while, it seems like things have just been bombarding with information. It's like we were sitting in a school here, and I noticed up on the wall there's a poster, and it says Wilfred Buck, scientist, Opaskwayak Cree Nation. And I was laughing about that, and I showed that to my wife. And then with the Crave, people were contacting me about the Crave film and how well it was done and things like that. And with this new video, planetarium video we got going on, everything just seems to be snowballing. And pretty soon my head's going to be really big, and you won't see behind me, just my big head.
The film was named one of top 5 audience favorites at Hot Docs, the Canadian International Documentary Film Festival, earlier this year. Lisa, what did you hear about how it's, you've alluded to this, you know, that it's a story that resonates, but what did you hear from audiences and from people who have seen it and shared it?
I think people find it really moving. They're really touched. It also is funny at parts. There's a lot of humor, and of course, Indigenous people know this. Just because there's hard histories doesn't mean there's not a lot of laughs along the way. But I also think it's genuinely inspired people and given them a sense of hope about what's possible. And I think Wilfred's story and the way that he represents all the teachings that have been passed on to him that he's now sharing is really something. And, you know, there's a lot of things to be kind of bummed out about these days. And I think there's something that really, truly uplifts people in watching the film. And so it's not been unusual in theaters when we've been on the film festival circuit for there to be spontaneous applause at the end of the movie. I think it really gives us something that we carry with us moving forward. And
if I may, Wilfred, you're also just one of those people that carries joy in your face when you smile. You know, like you just have that sort of, you can feel the soul when you smile. You know, Lisa, you're from Amjin First Nation, so that means meeting place by the rapid water. Wilfred, obviously, from Opaskwayak here, Cree Nation in Manitoba. That means the place where there's upward growth of trees. How do you think that connection helped you, Lisa, to tell Wilfred's story? Was there a connection there for the two of you?
One thing I will say, and then I'll let Wilfred answer, is that what I found, I also want to comment on his memoir and that I put into the film, is that I remember one of the first things that stuck in my mind from his memoir was my first recollections are on the banks of the Saskatchewan River. And the idea that the actual land where he was raised until he was 5, living on the land, was just living within him still. And that was so crucial to how he was brought up, is something that I tried to honor in the film. And I think it speaks to a humility of understanding that we're all interconnected and that we rely on the land and the waters. And I tried to show that within the film in various ways by honoring the place that Wilfred comes from.
I see you wanting to say something, Wilfred. You've got that smile on your face.
Well, somebody was peeking through the window trying to take pictures of us.
Oh. Well, you said it yourself. You're famous, so you gotta get used to that, right? You guys are collaborating on it.
Lisa has wove through the film this image of a fish, namel, we call him, the sturgeon. And the sturgeon, for a lot of Indigenous people, is a very, very important being. It talks about ancestry, it talks about generations, it talks about bloodlines, it talks about family, and it talks about a time continuum, and it talks about the responsibilities of the 7 generations. And I remember as a young person watching my grandfather pull out big, huge, massive sturgeon that were entangled in his nets, because my grandfather was a fisherman as well as a trapper and a hunter.
You talk about, there's a part in the film where you say like they were just all over the sturgeon, right? I think you describe it as like a big black mass of like they were just always there. You guys are collaborating. I have to ask you this before we lose your time this morning. You're collaborating on a new project, I understand. What's it about, Wilfred?
Well, the new project that was just finished is one with about astronomy, and it's a full immersive planetarium show, and the other one is based on I guess maybe part 2, you could call it, of Wilfred Buck, and it delves more into the aspect of ceremony and especially the Sundance and how it affects the communities, but especially the young people.
Yeah. So I will add to what Wilfred said that the Dome video is coming out just now, like early next year, and it'll be a 20-minute family-friendly show and it's called Wilfred Buck's Star Stories. So it will be a chance for, whether it's an inflatable dome, a planetarium, any 360 dome viewing device, you can connect with this. And then we're early in development on a kind of part 2 that delves more into the ceremony side that was raised beautifully at the end of the Wilfred Buck movie.
That sounds so cool. I was going to ask you when it was going to be released, so early in the new year. Thank you both for being here. I'll let you go now and sign your autographs.
Thank you for having us.
All right, thanks a lot.
Sincerely, take care. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Wilfred Buck and Lisa Jackson with us live via Zoom this morning. They're in Mississauga, busy working on more projects, as you heard. They were talking about their documentary that has its Canadian premiere on Crave this week. It is Wilfred Buck, the documentary of the same name, and it's adapted from Wilfred's memoir called I Have Lived 4 Lives, which is a 96-minute film that moves between earth and sky and past and present.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes our world. Staying on top of stories around the globe. And connected close to home. It's news you can trust. Delivered when you want and where you want. On Canada's News app. Now with CBC Radio 1. Local and live. Download the CBC News app for free.
It is 8:28 a.m. and our local news is coming up here in a couple of minutes. Pardon me, I just hiccuped on the air. That rarely happens, but in this day and age, hey, just figure I might as well tell you what that was. Let's get into what's going on in traffic. Corey actually, during our last interview, was putting a number of updates on screen. As if you're just joining our Wednesday morning, it's been blustery out there. We've had issues on the highways, and now we have an issue in the city. Lights are totally out right now at Roblin, and that is Dale and Anna, both calling the commuter line. So totally out at Roblin. So treat it as a 4-way stop, please. Oh, Corey, can you just come on mic with us here?
Yeah, sorry. Dale is name, but it's also a street. So Roblin and Dale is the intersection. I should write probably more clearly when I put things on the Google Doc.
It's okay. I thought it says Dale says, so I thought it was Dale, but it's enough. Roblin and Dale.
Yeah, so Anna says, to be clear, that the lights are totally out at Roblin and Dale. So treat that as a 4-way stop. She said that the westbound, in particular on Roblin, is pretty backed up, so heads up there. Also got a call from Chris. He says the south perimeter is a total sheet of ice right now. People are going about 60 kilometers an hour. He saw there was a car that kind of spun out. It was kind of on the curb. So just be really, really careful on the highways. Highways in general. I've heard about Highway 59, Highway number 1, especially heading towards Headingley from Winnipeg, as well as Highway 16 are particularly bad from Collars as well.
Dale, Colin. Again, about everything.
Yeah. If Dale, if you're out there, if you want to give us a call, let me know.
Thank you, Corey.
No problem.
788-3093 is that number if you do want to reach us. Now, a couple quick reminders. One of the things is that Make the Season Kind is coming up, and I just want to highlight that because it is CBC Manitoba's Day of Programming in support of Harvest Manitoba and its member agencies all across this province, and it is coming up this Friday. So 2 days from now with live music and stories and really just digging into into the need that exists, but also digging into the solutions and hoping that we can come together as a community to make this season kind. So that is coming up this Friday. And remember, it starts in the morning and it goes all through the whole day on all of our local programs, which is Radio Noon and Up to Speed, and then the weekend morning show, all of our radio shows, as well as what's online and our CBC television news. So we certainly hope that you circle a date on the calendar. Right now, your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is minus 13, but that wind northwest is gusting to 71, making it feel like minus 27 and blowing snow around, reducing visibility. There is a blowing snow advisory that includes Winnipeg, the Red River and Pembina valleys, as well as parts of the Interlake. Our temperature sliding today, by the way, to minus 16. Scott Gillingham says Winnipeg's growth is straining the city's finances to the breaking point. The mayor is warning of tough choices in store as the city prepares to release its budget next Wednesday. Gillingham commissioned his own poll to find out how Winnipeggers wanted to deal with the revenue crunch. It suggests people strongly favor getting more money from the province rather than raising municipal taxes.
People understand that our city is growing. We've grown by 65,000 people in the last 3 years, and there's pressure on our city services to keep delivering services for a growing city.
A small ray of light breaking through the dark financial clouds yesterday is the Winnipeg Police Service revealing it has been able to reach its revenue targets by saving $2 million this quarter. Even so, recent projections suggest the city is facing a deficit of $23 million this year. Construction to reopen Portage and Main to pedestrian traffic is officially underway, and the city says it means that crews will install the first long-term lane closers. That'll impact your drive. Sewer repairs and demolition work on the existing pedestrian barricades are going to happen in the coming days. Traffic will be restricted at various locations throughout Portage and Main over the next 6 months. You can see a full list of closures on the City of Winnipeg website. The head of the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce welcomes the decision to open a Manitoba trade office in Washington. Lauren Remillard says it's something his group recommended after a recent trip to the U.S. Capitol. He says many American politicians and other officials don't know where Manitoba is.
We've met with Ontario, we've met with Quebec, we've met with BC. They could name the offices of the other province. They kind of had to scratch their head a little bit and wonder, where is Manitoba? And we had to explain, we're north of North Dakota, right beside Ontario.
Remillard says Manitoba can't expect Americans to understand the opportunities this province offers without being physically present. He says the person who runs the office is going to have to speak the Trump form of Republican messaging, and Remillard thinks there are several people who would fit that bill. The Pembina Trails School Division confirms it was the victim of a cybersecurity incident on its phone and network systems. The phone lines are back up and running, but Pembina Trails is still working to restore other parts of its network. In a letter to parents, the division says in order to secure the system, they've had to make a number of its services unavailable. So it's asking parents to be on alert for any unusual activities or suspicious contact on their network system, advising them not to open or click on any links they don't recognize and to report them promptly to the division. Well, pressure is mounting on South Korea's president. Protesters from South Korea's biggest labor union are among those calling for Yoon Suk Yeol to resign. They vow to strike unless he does. Yoon's attempt to impose martial law has created a crisis for South Korea. Opposition parties have now started impeachment proceedings against him. The owner of a unique gift shop in Lacabani says her business is struggling, partly because of the economy, but she says it's also because of the local government's lack of a tourism strategy. Manitoba-made owner Lita Toms says the town and RM need to build more lodging and use social media to promote Lacabani as a destination, not just as a place to visit the cottage over long weekends.
We do promote long weekends pretty well, but businesses can't survive on long weekend tourism. We need people here all summer. We need people here in the winter, but there's not a lot to do here in the winter.
The town and RM of Lacabani say they want to build a new recreational hub on public land that's been sitting mostly unused for about 17 years. They're flouting ideas like kayak rentals and a skating trail, but there are no clear details on when this project would happen. You can find more Manitoba news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks for the morning, Heather Wells.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That's Heather Wells from our news department. Big thanks also to Joni Nicolo and Megan Ketchison, who've been out there updating all morning, and to our live team, Abby Adeyemi, as well as Kevin Nipatebo and Corey Funk, to our team of associate producers who work so hard on all the programs you hear and booking the guests and writing the materials, as well as our leaders in unit, Leif Larson and Nellie Gonzalez. And this week, Robin Summerfield was producing yesterday, I believe. It is 8:35, and with a last look at what's happening on the roadways, Corey's here.
Yeah, the lights are out. Heard from Anna at Roblin and Dale. So that could be an issue for folks. She said it's particularly backed up westbound. So heads up there. South Perimeter heard it is a sheet of ice, and a similar case for many highways right across the province. 59, Highway number 1, particularly between Winnipeg and Headingley, as well as Highway 16. So look out if you're hitting the highways. Poor visibility all across the province, up north, down south, everywhere.
All right. Thanks very much, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for tuning into Information Radio this Wednesday morning on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. I am going to be off until next Wednesday, so I'm away for a week. Emily Brass will be here. And don't forget Friday to make a date with CBC Manitoba to make the season kind. Take care, be well, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. The Current is coming up next.